The pencil snapped between my fingers, and I stared at the broken halves, my frustration mirroring the splintered wood. I tossed them onto my cluttered desk and leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, reminding me of the looming deadline. "Helena!" Ethan's voice boomed from downstairs. "Where are you? Dinner's getting cold." I sighed, glancing at my unfinished storyboard. "Coming!" I called back, reluctantly pushing away from my desk. As I descended the stairs, the aroma of garlic and herbs wafted up, making my stomach growl. Ethan stood at the bottom, arms crossed, his expression a mix of annoyance and concern. "You've been up there for hours," he said, his tone clipped. "I thought we agreed you'd take a break tonight." I forced a smile. "I'm sorry, I lost track of time. The publisher wants to see progress on the new storyline, and The publisher this, the deadline that," Ethan interrupted, throwing his hands up. "When was the last time we had a proper conversation that didn't revolve around your work?" The word stung, but I bit back a retort. "Let's just have dinner, okay? I'm starving." We sat at the table, the silence between us thick and uncomfortable. I picked at my food, my appetite suddenly gone. "So," Ethan said, breaking the silence, "any plans to rejoin the land of the living anytime soon?" I set my fork down with a clatter. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm tired of being married to a ghost," he snapped. "You're either locked away in your office or zoned out thinking about your next project. We haven't been on a date in months, Helena." "I'm working towards something important," I defended. "This contract could change everything for us." Ethan's laugh was bitter. "Us? There is no us anymore. It's just you and your precious graphic novels." The words hit me like a slap. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "That's not fair, and you know it." "Isn't it?" Ethan challenged, rising to his feet. "When was the last time you did anything around the house? The laundry's piling up, the fridge is empty, and I can't remember the last time we had sex." I felt my cheeks burn with anger and embarrassment. "I didn't realize I was supposed to be your maid and your personal porn star." Ethan's eyes widened, then narrowed. "That's not what I meant, and you know it. I just want my wife back." "I'm right here," I shouted, gesturing wildly. "I'm sorry if my career is inconvenient for you, but I'm not going to apologize for pursuing my dreams." "Your dreams," Ethan repeated, his voice low and dangerous. "What about our dreams, Helena? What about the family we talked about, the life we planned together?" I felt the fight drain out of me, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. "People change, Ethan. Dreams change." "Yeah," he said, turning away. "I'm starting to see that." As he walked out of the room, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at the screen and saw a message from my publisher. "Contract's ready. Meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. to sign. This is your big break, Helena." I stared at the message, my heart pounding with excitement and dread. This was everything I'd worked for, but at what cost? The sound of the front door slamming jolted me from my thoughts. I rushed to the window, watching Ethan's car peel out of the driveway and disappear down the street. As I stood there, alone in the quiet house, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of a precipice, about to take a leap that would change everything. I arrived at the publishing house the next morning, my nerves jangling like loose change in a pocket. The contract signing went smoothly, but as I left the building, my elation was tempered by the memory of Ethan's angry departure the night before. My phone buzzed. Ethan's name flashed on the screen, but I hesitated before answering. "Hello? Where are you?" His voice was cold, controlled. "I just finished the meeting with my publisher. I signed the contract." A long pause. "So you went ahead with it, without even discussing it with me?" "Ethan, we've talked about this for months. It's not like it's a surprise. No, what's a surprise is coming home to find the house a mess and my wife gone." I felt a flash of anger. "I'm not your maid, Ethan. I have a career." "A career," he scoffed. "Is that what you call neglecting everything else in your life?" "That's not fair. You know what's not fair? Coming home to an empty fridge and a pile of laundry. Maybe, if you spent half as much time on our home as you do on your little drawings, we wouldn't be having this conversation." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, tears pricking my eyes. "Helena? Is everything okay?" I turned to see Elijah, my old school friend, standing behind me. His concerned face was a welcome sight. "Elijah, what are you doing here?" He grinned. I work just down the street. Saw you coming out looking like you'd seen a ghost. Want to grab a coffee? At the cafe, I poured out my troubles to Elijah. He listened intently, his brow furrowed. Helena, you can't let Ethan make you feel guilty for pursuing your dreams, he said finally. Your talent is a gift. Don't let anyone dim your light. I smiled weakly. Thanks, Elijah. It's just, I feel like I'm losing him, like I have to choose between my marriage and my career. Elijah leaned forward. A real partner would support your ambitions, not resent them. Have you considered that maybe Ethan's the one who needs to change, not you? His words struck a chord, but before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. A text from Ethan. We need to talk. Be home by 6. I said goodbye to Elijah and headed home, my stomach in knots. When I arrived, Ethan was waiting in the living room, his face like thunder. I've been thinking, he began without preamble. This isn't working. Something has to change. I agree, I said cautiously. We need to find a better balance. No, he cut me off. You need to decide what's more important, your little hobby or our marriage. I felt like I'd been slapped. My little hobby is my career, Ethan. It's part of who I am. And what about who we are? He demanded. What about the life we planned, the family we talked about? Plans change, Ethan. People grow. His laugh was bitter. Grow apart, you mean? That's not what I'm done competing with your drawings for your attention, he interrupted. Either you start acting like a proper wife, or... He left the threat hanging, but its implication was clear. I felt a chill run down my spine. Or what? I whispered. Ethan's eyes were cold. Or maybe it's time we both reconsider this marriage. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and final. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. In that moment, I realized we were standing on the edge of a precipice, and the ground beneath us was crumbling fast. As I looked at Ethan, the man I had loved for so long, I couldn't help but wonder. Was this the beginning of the end, or just the end of the beginning? The days following Ethan's ultimatum were a blur of tension and unspoken accusations. We danced around each other like wary boxers, neither willing to throw the first punch. I buried myself in my work, using my art as a shield against the growing chasm between us. One evening, as I searched for a misplaced sketch in Ethan's home office, I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. Tucked away in his desk drawer was a stack of credit card bills, hidden beneath a pile of mundane paperwork. My hands trembled as I pulled them out, my eyes widening at the charges for luxury hotels I'd never heard of. What are you doing? I whirled around to find Ethan standing in the doorway, his face a mask of anger and... Was that fear? I was looking for a sketch, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I held up the bills. What are these, Ethan? He crossed the room in 3 quick strides, snatching the papers from my hand. Those are private. You had no right to go through my things. Private? I echoed, incredulous. We're married, Ethan. Since when do we keep secrets? His laugh was harsh, bitter. That's rich coming from you. You've been keeping plenty of secrets lately, haven't you? Locking yourself away, choosing your work over me. I felt my temper flare. My work isn't a secret, Ethan. It's my career, my passion. But this, I gestured to the bills he was clutching. This looks like something else entirely. You wouldn't understand, he muttered, turning away. Then help me understand, I pleaded. What's going on, Ethan? Who were you with at those hotels? He spun back to face me, his eyes blazing. Is that what you think? That I'm cheating on you? What am I supposed to think? I shot back. You've been distant, angry, and now these bills? Maybe if you paid half as much attention to our marriage as you do to your little comic books, you wouldn't have to ask these questions, he spat. The words stung, but I stood my ground. Don't turn this around on me. I'm not the one with unexplained hotel stays on my credit card. Ethan's face contorted with rage. He slammed the bills down on the desk, making me flinch. I don't have to explain myself to you, not when you've made it clear where your priorities lie. My priorities? I echoed, disbelieving. You're the one who gave me an ultimatum, Ethan. You're the one who told me to choose between my career and our marriage. Because I'm tired of being second best, he roared. I'm tired of coming home to an empty house, of feeling like a stranger in my own marriage. We stood there, chests heaving, the air between us crackling with tension. In that moment, I saw a stranger standing before me, not the man I'd married. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Who are you? I whispered. more to myself than to him. Ethan's face softened for a moment, a flicker of the man I once knew shining through. But then the mask slammed back into place. "I could ask you the same thing," he said coldly. He brushed past me, pausing at the door. "I'm going out. Don't wait up." The front door slammed moments later, leaving me alone in the sudden silence. I sank into Ethan's chair, my mind reeling. The credit card bills lay scattered on the desk, each one a damning piece of evidence. As I sat there, surrounded by the remnants of our shattered trust, a chilling thought crept into my mind. What if I didn't really know Ethan at all? And more terrifyingly, what if I no longer recognized the person I'd become? The questions swirled in my head, unanswered and menacing. One thing was clear. Our marriage was balanced on a knife's edge, and I had a sinking feeling we were about to fall. The days after discovering the hotel bills were a haze of suspicion and doubt. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept drifting back to those damning pieces of paper. Ethan's behavior grew increasingly erratic, his mood swinging between cold indifference and explosive anger. One afternoon, I decided to confront him directly. I couldn't live with the uncertainty anymore. I found him in the kitchen, aggressively chopping vegetables for dinner. "Ethan, we need to talk about those bills," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He slammed the knife down, making me jump. "I told you to drop it, Helena. It's none of your business." "None of my business?" I echoed, incredulous. "I'm your wife. If you're—" I couldn't bring myself to say the word cheating. Ethan's laugh was bitter. "Oh, now you remember you're my wife? Funny how that only matters when it suits you." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression changing subtly. "I have to go out," he said abruptly, heading for the door. Something in his tone made me suspicious. "Where are you going?" "Work emergency," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. On impulse, I grabbed my keys. "I'll come with you." Ethan's face paled. "No, it's fine. I won't be long." But I was already following him out the door. He drove erratically, constantly checking his rearview mirror. I stayed a few cars behind, my heart pounding. He pulled into the parking lot of an upscale hotel. I watched, stunned, as a young woman with long blonde hair rushed out to meet him. They embraced, and my world shattered. I sat in my car, trembling, as they disappeared into the hotel. Tears blurred my vision, but I couldn't look away. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, they emerged, laughing and holding hands. As they reached Ethan's car, the woman, Angie, I would later learn, kissed him passionately. It was like a knife to my heart. I don't remember driving home. I was numb, moving on autopilot. When Ethan returned hours later, I was waiting. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He froze, his eyes darting around the room. "Helena, I can explain." "How long?" I repeated, each word sharp as glass. Ethan's shoulders slumped. 6 months. He admitted. The truth hit me like a physical blow. 6 months, half a year of lies, of betrayal. "Why?" I choked out, his face contorted with anger. "Because she makes me feel wanted, Helena. She doesn't disappear into her work for days on end. She's there for me, really there." "So this is my fault?" I asked, incredulous. "You're never here," he shouted. "You're always working, always with your head in the clouds. I needed someone who saw me, who put me first." His words stung, but a part of me recognized the truth in them. Had I really been so absent? "I put you first by supporting us while you chased your dreams," I said quietly. "I put you first by believing in you, even when you didn't believe in yourself." Ethan's face softened for a moment, then hardened again. "It's not enough, Helena. I need more. I need a real wife, not just a roommate who occasionally remembers I exist." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with finality. "What do you want from me, Ethan?" I asked, my voice hollow. His eyes met mine, cold and determined. "I want you to quit, give up this graphic novel nonsense and be the wife I need. Or—" He left the ultimatum unspoken, but I heard it loud and clear. My career or my marriage. My passion or my partner. As I stood there facing the man I thought I knew, I realized I was at a crossroads. The decision I made now would shape the rest of my life. The question was, could I live with either choice? The days following Ethan's ultimatum were a blur of tears and sleepless nights. I threw myself into my work, desperately trying to ignore the gaping wound in my heart. But every time I looked up from my drafting table, the empty house seemed to mock me. One afternoon, I emerged from my studio to find Ethan standing in the living room, his face a mask of barely contained rage. "What is this?" he demanded, gesturing to the pile of laundry on the couch, the dishes in the sink, the layer of dust on every surface. I blinked, disoriented. Had it really been that long since I'd done any housework? "I've been working on a deadline," I started to explain, but Ethan cut me off. "Always with the deadlines," he exploded. "What about your responsibilities here? What about being a wife?" The words stung, but I felt my own anger rising to meet his. "Being a wife doesn't mean being your maid, Ethan, and it certainly doesn't mean giving up my career for your comfort." His eyes narrowed. "So that's your decision, then? Your little comic books over our marriage?" "They're not just comic books," I snapped. "They're my passion, my art, and unlike you, they don't demand I give up everything I am to be worthy of them." The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I'd crossed a line. Ethan's face went white, then red with fury. "If that's how you feel," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, "then maybe we don't have anything left to discuss." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. I stood there, shaking, as the silence of the house closed in around me. Hours passed, the sun set, casting long shadows across the cluttered living room. I was about to call Ethan when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Jean, our elderly neighbor and an old family friend, standing on the porch. "Helena, dear," he said, his kind eyes crinkling with concern. "I saw Ethan tear out of here earlier. Is everything all right?" Before I knew it, I was pouring out the whole sordid story, the fights, the affair, the ultimatum. Jean listened patiently, his weathered face growing more troubled with each revelation. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Helena, I've known you and Ethan since you were newlyweds." "The man you're describing, that's not the Ethan I know." I laughed bitterly. "Maybe none of us really knew him." Jean shook his head. "No, that's not what I mean. The Ethan I know would never give you an ultimatum like that. He was always so proud of your talent, your drive." His words made me pause. It was true, Ethan had once been my biggest cheerleader. When had that changed? "Something doesn't add up," Jean continued. "Have you considered that there might be more to this story than you know?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" Jean leaned in, his voice low. "I've seen some strange things lately. Late-night phone calls, mysterious visitors when you're not home. I think there's more going on with Ethan than just an affair." My mind reeled. What was Jean suggesting? That Ethan was involved in something even worse than infidelity? "What should I do?" I whispered, feeling lost and overwhelmed. Jean's eyes met mine, steady and determined. "You need to dig deeper, Helena, for your sake and for Ethan's. There are secrets here that need to come to light." As Jean's words sank in, I felt a shift inside me. The hurt and betrayal were still there, but now they were joined by a fierce determination. If there were secrets to uncover, I would find them. I looked at Jean, my jaw set. "You're right, it's time I got some real answers." As Jean left, I stood in the doorway, watching the night settle over our quiet street. I knew that whatever I discovered next would change everything, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. The truth was out there, and I was going to find it, no matter the cost. Jean's words echoed in my mind as I stood in our bedroom, my hands trembling as I rifled through Ethan's belongings. I felt like a thief in my own home, but I needed answers. The guilt gnawing at me was nothing compared to the desperation clawing at my chest. That's when I found it, a hotel loyalty card I'd never seen before, tucked away in the back of his wallet. My heart raced as I examined it, noting the high-end chain's logo. This was it, the smoking gun I'd been looking for. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and downloaded a GPS tracking app. I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the install button. Was I really going to do this? Invade Ethan's privacy so completely? But then I remembered the lipstick stain I'd found on his collar last week, the hushed phone calls, the way he'd pull away when I tried to touch him. I hit install. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and adrenaline. I played the part of the oblivious wife, all while obsessively checking the app. Ethan's movements became a roadmap of betrayal, frequent stops at unfamiliar addresses, long stays at hotels across town. One evening, as we sat in stony silence at the dinner table, my phone buzzed. Ethan had just checked into the same hotel where I'd first seen him with Angie. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked, his voice laced with false concern. I forced a smile. Just work stuff, nothing important. He nodded, already losing interest. I have to go out of town this weekend, business trip. The lie rolled off his tongue so easily it made me sick. Oh? Where to? Just a conference upstate. Boring stuff. I nodded, my mind racing. This was it, my chance to catch him red-handed. The next day I followed him at a distance, my heart pounding so hard I was sure he'd hear it even from his own car. We ended up at a luxurious resort, the kind of place we used to dream about visiting together. I watched from across the parking lot as Angie ran to greet him, throwing her arms around his neck. They kissed passionately, oblivious to the world around them, oblivious to me, watching from the shadows, my world crumbling. Tears blurred my vision as I fumbled for my phone, snapping picture after picture. Each click of the camera felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. As they disappeared into the resort, arm in arm, I sat in my car, overwhelmed by the weight of what I'd discovered. It wasn't just an affair, it was a whole other life Ethan had built without me. My phone buzzed again. A text from Elijah. How are you holding up? Want to grab coffee? I stared at the message, a lifeline in the storm of my emotions. Elijah had been my rock through all of this, a reminder that not everyone in my life was a liar. But as I was about to reply, another notification popped up. The tracking app. Ethan was on the move again. My finger hovered between Elijah's message and the app. In that moment, I realized I was at a crossroads. I could turn back now, pretend I never saw any of this, and try to salvage what was left of my marriage. Or I could push forward, uncover the full extent of Ethan's betrayal and face the consequences. The choice seemed impossible. My hand shook as I looked from my phone to the resort where my husband was with another woman. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, was a lie. And now I had to decide, did I want the comforting illusion or the painful truth? As the sun set over the resort, casting long shadows across the parking lot, I made my decision. There was no turning back now. Whatever came next, I was ready to face it head-on. With a deep breath, I started my car. It was time to confront Ethan and reclaim my life, whatever the cost. My hands shook as I dialed Ethan's parents. I'd never imagined I'd be making this call, but I needed allies. To my surprise, they believed me instantly. We've suspected something was wrong for a while, his mother said, her voice tight with anger. We'll meet you there. The next morning I stood in the resort lobby, flanked by Ethan's parents. My heart raced as we approached the front desk. We're here to surprise Ethan, I said, forcing a smile. The receptionist, sensing the tension, hesitated before giving us a key card. As we rode the elevator, Ethan's father placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. You're doing the right thing, Helena, he said softly. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. We paused outside the room. I could hear muffled laughter from inside. With a deep breath, I swiped the key card. The door swung open. Ethan and Angie froze mid-embrace, their faces a mask of shock and horror. Helena? Ethan gasped, stumbling backward. Mom? Dad? What are you? Save it, I snapped, my voice steadier than I felt. I pulled out my phone, showing him the tracking app. I know everything, Ethan. The hotels, the lies, all of it. Angie scrambled to gather her things, her face burning with shame. Ethan's parents stood silent, their disappointment palpable. Helena, please, Ethan begged, reaching for me. I can explain. I stepped back, my anger rising. Explain what? How you've been living a double life? How you made me feel like I was crazy for suspecting something was wrong? I never meant to hurt you, he stammered. A bitter laugh escaped me. You gave me an ultimatum, Ethan. My career or our marriage, all while you were sneaking around with her. I gestured to Angie, who flinched, and then Ethan's father stepped forward, his face a storm of anger. Son, how'd you do this? To Helena? To your family? Dad, Ethan started, but his mother cut him off. We raised you better than this, she said, her voice quivering with disappointment. As the reality of the situation sank in, Ethan's facade crumbled. He sank onto the bed, head in his hands. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. But his words felt hollow. I looked at the man I'd loved, the life we'd built, and felt nothing but a vast, aching emptiness. I want a divorce, I said, the words ringing with finality. Ethan's head snapped up, his eyes wide with panic. No, Helena, please. We can work this out. I'll do anything. It's too late, I interrupted. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. As I turned to leave, Angie spoke up. Helena, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I held up a hand, silencing her. Save it. You're welcome to him. With that, I walked out of the room, out of the marriage that had defined me for so long. Ethan's parents followed, leaving him alone with the wreckage of his choices. In the elevator, the adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation began to fade. My knees buckled, and Ethan's mother caught me, pulling me into a fierce hug. You're so brave, she whispered. We're here for you, whatever you need. As we exited the resort, the bright sunlight felt like a spotlight on my pain. But beneath the hurt and betrayal, I felt something else stirring. A sense of freedom, of possibilities I hadn't allowed myself to imagine in years. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my wedding ring on my finger. With trembling hands, I slipped it off, staring at the small circle of gold that had once meant everything. What now? Ethan's father asked gently. I closed my fist around the ring, feeling the metal bite into my palm. Now, I said, my voice growing stronger, I start over, on my own terms. As we drove away from the resort, leaving Ethan and our shattered marriage behind, I felt a strange mix of grief and hope. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it was mine to choose. The weeks following the confrontation at the resort were a whirlwind of lawyers, paperwork, and tears. Ethan begged and pleaded, promising to change, swearing he'd do anything to save our marriage. But the trust was shattered, and I knew there was no going back. I stood in my living room, surrounded by boxes. The house that had once been our shared dream now felt like a prison of memories. I decided to sell it, to cut all ties with the life I'd shared with Ethan. As I taped up another box, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Ethan standing there, looking haggard and desperate. Helena, please, he said, his voice breaking. Don't do this. We can work it out. I'll go to therapy. I'll quit my job. Anything you want. I felt a flicker of pity, quickly extinguished by the memory of his betrayal. It's too late, Ethan. We're done. He fell to his knees, grabbing my hands. I love you. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. I gently pulled away. If you loved me, you wouldn't have betrayed me. You wouldn't have tried to force me to give up my dreams. I was wrong, he sobbed. I see that now. Please, give me another chance. For a moment, I wavered. The familiar pull of our shared history tugged at my heart. But then I remembered the strength I'd found in myself, the passion for my work that had sustained me through the darkest days. No, I said firmly. I deserve better, and I'm choosing myself. As I closed the door on Ethan's broken form, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I turned back to the boxes, now seeing them not as an end, but as a beginning. My phone buzzed with a text from my publisher. Final draft received. It's brilliant, Helena. This could be your breakout work. I smiled, feeling a surge of pride and excitement. My graphic novel, born from the pain and growth of the past months, was ready to meet the world. There was a knock at the door. This time, it was Elijah, arms full of packing tape and bubble wrap. Reinforcements have arrived, he announced with a grin. As we worked, Elijah regaled me with stories of his latest adventures, making me laugh for the first time in what felt like ages. I realized how much I'd missed this simple friendship, unmarred by expectations or betrayal. You know, Elijah said as we sealed the last box, I always knew you were strong, but the way you've handled all this, you're a freaking superhero, Helena. I blushed, but stood a little straighter. I don't know about superhero, but I do feel free, like I can finally be myself without apology. As the moving truck pulled away with the last of my belongings, I stood on the front lawn, keys in hand. Ethan's parents pulled up, here to support me one last time. We're so proud of you, Ethan's mother said, hugging me tight. You'll always be family to us, no matter what. I handed them the keys. Thank you for everything. With a deep breath, I walked away from the house, from the life I'd thought I wanted. Each step felt lighter, filled with possibility. Elijah waited by his car. Ready for your new adventure? I looked back at the house one last time, then turned to face the open road ahead. More than ready. As we drove away, the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant hues of pink and gold. It felt like a sign, an ending, yes, but also a beautiful new beginning. I thought of my graphic novel, of the strong, resilient heroine I'd created. I realized now that she wasn't just a character. She was the woman I'd become through this ordeal. You know, I said to Elijah, I think I have an idea for my next book. He grinned. I can't wait to read it. As the familiar streets of my old life faded in the rearview mirror, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was excited to see where it would lead. I was Helena, artist, survivor, and author of my own story. And this was just the beginning. I can't believe you would do this to me, Damien. At my father's funeral, of all places. My voice trembles with rage and disbelief as I confront my husband, his shirt hastily buttoned and lipstick smeared on his collar. Damien's eyes widen in surprise before narrowing with contempt. Don't be so dramatic, Raven. It's not like you were ever enough for me anyway. His words cut deep, reopening wounds I thought had long since scarred over. I think back to when we first met, how his charm and promises of success had blinded me to the red flags. I was just a naive, struggling artist then, desperate for love and validation. I gave up everything for you, I choke out, my vision blurring with unshed tears. My art, my dreams, my self-respect, and for what? A loveless marriage and a lifetime of regret? Damien scoffs, his handsome face twisting into a sneer. You were always so pathetic, Raven, clinging to me like I was your last hope. Well, guess what? I never needed you. I only married you for your father's money and connections. The truth of his words hits me like a punch to the gut. I think of all the years I wasted trying to win his love and approval while he was busy building a life with someone else, someone younger, prettier, more talented. Who is she, Damien? The woman you were just fucking in the coat room? My voice is low and dangerous, barely recognizable to my own ears. He smirks, unashamed. Her name is Sasha. She's everything you're not, Raven. Young, passionate, with a real future in the art world, and she's pregnant with my child. I feel like I might be sick. The betrayal is too much, too raw. I think of my father, cold in his casket just feet away. He never approved of Damien, never thought he was good enough for me, and now with his last breath he was proven right. I want a divorce, I say firmly, my hands shaking as I reach for my phone. I'm done being your doormat, Damien. I'm done letting you destroy me. He laughs, cruel and mocking. You'll never be free of me, Raven. I own you body and soul. Without me, you're nothing. But as I press record on my phone, capturing his vicious words for all the world to hear, I feel a flicker of something long forgotten stir inside me. Something like hope, like defiance. You're wrong, Damien, I say calmly, my tears drying on my cheeks. I may have lost myself for a while, but I'm taking my life back, starting now. And with that, I turn and walk away, my head held high despite the curious stares and whispered gossip of the funeral guests. I don't know what the future holds, but one thing is certain. Raven Callaghan is done being shattered. It's time to pick up the pieces and create a new masterpiece from the ruins of my broken dreams. The sleek lines of Damien's penthouse mock me as I step inside, a cruel reminder of the gilded cage I now call home. The minimalist decor, once so chic and sophisticated, feels cold and sterile, like a museum display of my shattered dreams. Raven, darling, you're back, Damien calls from the living room, his voice dripping with false affection. How was the funeral? I clench my fists, the memory of his betrayal still fresh and stinging. Like you care, I mutter, kicking off my heels and padding into the room. He's sprawled on the leather sofa, a glass of scotch dangling from his fingertips. Of course I care, sweetheart. Alistair was like a father to me. I snort, the irony almost too much to bear. Really? Because last I checked, most people don't skip their father-in-law's funeral to screw their mistress in the coat room. Damien's eyes flash with annoyance, his mask of concern slipping. I thought we were past that little misunderstanding, Raven. I explained everything. Misunderstanding? I echo, my voice rising with incredulity. You called me pathetic, said you only married me for my father's money, and let's not forget the part where you got your barely legal side piece pregnant. He sets down his drink, his jaw clenching. Watch your tone, Raven. You're treading on thin ice. I laugh, the sound harsh and brittle. Or what, Damien? You'll leave me? Ruin my life? Newsflash, asshole, you already have. Just then, the front door slams, announcing the arrival of my least favorite person. Lilith, Damien's teenage daughter from his first marriage, saunters in, her heavily lined eyes narrowing as she spots me. Oh, look, the gold digger's back, she sneers, tossing her designer bag on the counter. Shouldn't you be out spending my inheritance on tacky art supplies? Yes, I bite back a retort, knowing it's useless to engage with her. Lilith has hated me from the moment I moved in, seeing me as a threat to her daddy's fortune and attention. Lilith, please, Damien chides, but there's no real rebuke in his tone. Raven is part of this family now. You need to show her some respect. Respect? Lilith scoffs, her heavily glossed lips curling in disdain. For what? Her amazing ability to spread her legs and trap men into marriage? The words hit me like a slap, the air rushing from my lungs. I turn to Damien, expecting him to defend me, to put his daughter in her place. But he just shrugs, reaching for his drink again. She's not wrong, Raven. You didn't exactly bring much to the table when we met. No money, no connections, just a pretty face and a decent pair of tits. I feel like I might be sick, the room spinning around me. Is this really what he thinks of me? Is this all I am to him, to everyone in this God-forsaken family? I'm an artist, I whisper, my voice cracking. I have talent, I have dreams. Lilith rolls her eyes, her laughter cruel and mocking. Dreams? Wake up, Raven. You're nothing but a washed-up wannabe who got lucky, and now that Daddy's gone, your luck's about to run out. She flounces out of the room, her parting words hanging in the air like a noose. I turn to Damien, desperate for some shred of comfort, of reassurance, but he just shakes his head, his expression a mix of pity and contempt. She's right, you know. Without Alistair's money, we're screwed. The gallery's in the red, and your little art projects aren't exactly paying the bills. I feel like I'm suffocating, the walls of this beautiful, terrible apartment closing in on me. Is this really my life now? A loveless marriage, a resentful stepdaughter, a husband who sees me as nothing more than a meal ticket? I think back to the girl I used to be, the one who believed in love and art and the power of her own voice. She seems so far away now, a distant memory of a life I can never reclaim. But as I stand there, something inside me hardens, a small, fierce spark of defiance flickering to life. I may be trapped, I may be broken, but I'm not dead yet. And one way or another, I'm going to make them pay for what they've done to me. 5 years. That's how long it's been since I stood in front of the mirror, a shadow of the woman I used to be. My once vibrant eyes are dull, my skin pale and drawn. The paintbrushes that were once an extension of my soul now lie forgotten, gathering dust in the corner of my studio. I hear the front door slam, followed by the click of high heels on the marble floor. Lilith, now 21 and every bit as vicious as her father, enters the room, her lip curled in a sneer. Still moping around, I see, she taunts, her gaze sweeping over my paint-splattered sweatpants and messy bun. Don't you have anything better to do than wallow in self-pity? I don't bother to respond, knowing it will only fuel her cruelty. Lilith has made it her mission to torment me at every turn, blaming me for the family's financial struggles and her own miserable existence. You know, if you weren't such a useless leech, maybe Daddy wouldn't have to work so hard to keep us afloat, she continues, examining her perfectly manicured nails. But I guess that's what happens when you marry a talentless gold digger. I feel a flicker of anger, but it's quickly extinguished by the weight of my own despair. She's right, after all. What have I contributed to this family, to this life? Nothing but broken dreams and empty promises. The sound of the door opening again jolts me from my thoughts. Damien enters, his suit impeccable and his expression unreadable. He barely spares me a glance as he pours himself a drink, the amber liquid sloshing against the sides of the glass. Lilith, darling, I need to speak with Raven alone, he says, his tone calm but firm. Why don't you go shopping with your friends? Use the black card. Lilith's eyes light up, her earlier venom forgotten in the face of her father's generosity. She snatches the credit card from his outstretched hand and flounces out of the room, leaving me alone with the man I once thought I loved. Your father called, Damien says, taking a sip of his scotch. He wants to see you. I blink, surprised by the mention of Alistair. We haven't spoken in months, not since our last explosive argument about my life choices. What does he want? I ask, my voice hoarse from disuse. Damien shrugs, his gaze still fixed on the view outside the window. He didn't say, but he sounded different, like he was in pain. A flicker of hope ignites in my chest, a tiny ember in the ashes of my dreams. Could this be it? The chance I've been waiting for? The opportunity to escape this gilded hell and start anew? I'll go see him, I say, my resolve strengthening with each word. Maybe he's finally ready to listen, to understand. Damien scoffs. draining the last of his drink. Don't get your hopes up, Raven. Alistair Blackwood is a stubborn old bastard. He'll never change. But as I walk out of the penthouse, my head held high for the first time in years, I feel a sense of purpose, of determination. I may have lost myself along the way, but I'm not going to let them win. I'll see my father, hear what he has to say. And then, one way or another, I'll find a way to break free from this nightmare and reclaim the life I once had, even if it means burning everything to the ground and starting from scratch. The church is silent, save for the muffled sobs of the mourners and the soft rustling of tissues. I sit in the front pew, my eyes fixed on the polished wooden casket that holds my father's lifeless body. Alistair Blackwood, the man who was supposed to be my rock, my protector, is gone. I feel a hand on my shoulder and turn to see Damien, his face a mask of feigned sympathy. "I'm so sorry for your loss, darling," he murmurs, his voice like silk hiding a dagger. "Your father was a great man." I nod, too numb to speak. I think back to our last conversation, just days before his sudden death. He had hinted at a change in his will, a final act of love and redemption. But now I'll never know what he wanted to say, never have the chance to make things right between us. The service ends, and I stand on shaky legs, accepting condolences from strangers and distant relatives. Damien is nowhere to be seen, and a sinking feeling settles in my gut. I excuse myself and slip out of the church, my heels clicking on the stone steps. I hear voices coming from the coat room, and I freeze, my heart pounding in my chest. It's Damien, and he's not alone. I inch closer, my breath caught in my throat. "God, Sasha, you feel so good," he groans, and I hear the unmistakable sound of flesh on flesh. "I can't wait to leave that frigid bitch and start a new life with you." "What about the money?" a woman's voice asks, breathless and eager. "You said she was going to inherit everything." Damien laughs, the sound cruel and mocking. "Don't worry about that, baby. I have a plan. Once the will is read, I'll contest it, say that Raven manipulated the old man into cutting me out. She's got no proof, no witnesses. It'll be her word against mine." I feel like I might be sick, my stomach churning with rage and disgust. How could I have been so blind, so stupid? I trusted him, loved him, and all along he was plotting to use me and toss me aside. "And what about the kid?" Sasha asks, her voice tinged with worry. "You sure it's yours?" "Of course it's mine," Damien scoffs. "You think I'd let some other man touch what's mine?" "No, this is our ticket to the good life, Sasha, a new start, with Raven's money and my brains. We'll be unstoppable. I can't listen anymore, can't bear to hear another word of their sickening plan. I fumble for my phone, my hands shaking as I hit the record button. I need proof, need to expose Damien for the lying, cheating bastard he is. I step into the coat room, my head held high and my eyes blazing with fury. "Well, well, well," I say, my voice dripping with venom. "What do we have here?" Damien and Sasha spring apart, their faces flushed and their clothing disheveled. "Raven, I can explain," Damien stammers, his eyes wide with panic. "Oh, I think you've explained quite enough," I snarl, holding up my phone. "I heard everything, Damien, every disgusting, despicable word." Sasha blanches, her hand flying to her stomach. "You recorded us?" she whispers, her voice trembling. I nod, a cold smile spreading across my face. "Every single second. And now I'm going to make sure the whole world knows what a pathetic, conniving worm you really are, Damien Callaghan." I turn on my heel and storm out of the room, my heart pounding with a newfound sense of purpose. I may have lost my father, my marriage, and my self-respect, but I'll be damned if I let them take anything else from me. It's time to fight back, to take what's mine and burn the rest to the ground. And I won't stop until Damien and his little whore are nothing but ashes at my feet. The funeral guests stare at me in stunned silence as I march back into the church, my phone clutched in my hand like a smoking gun. Damien follows close behind, his face a mask of panic and fury. "Raven, please, let's talk about this in private," he hisses, reaching for my arm. I yank away from his grasp, my eyes blazing with a fire I thought had long since been extinguished. "Oh, we're going to talk, all right," I say, my voice ringing out clear and strong. "But not in private, not anymore." I turn to face the crowd, my heart pounding in my chest. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have an announcement to make. My husband, Damien Callaghan, is a liar, a cheat, and a thief." Gasps and murmurs ripple through the room, and I see Lilith's face turn pale with shock. Good. Let her see her precious daddy for the snake he really is. I have proof, I continue, holding up my phone. Recorded evidence of Damien's infidelity and his plans to contest my father's will and steal my inheritance. Damien lunges for the phone, but I'm too quick for him. I hit play and his voice fills the church, every damning word echoing off the high ceilings. You bitch, he snarls when the recording ends, his face twisted with rage. You think you can destroy me? I made you, Raven. Without me, you're nothing. I laugh, the sound harsh and bitter. That's where you're wrong, Damien. I'm not nothing. I'm Raven fucking Blackwood, and I'm done being your doormat. I reach into my purse and pull out a thick envelope, tossing it at his feet. I've already spoken to my lawyer. My father changed his will before he died, leaving everything to me. And as for you, you're out on your ass, with nothing but the clothes on your back and the child support payments for your bastard kid. Damien's face drains of color, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. You can't do this, he whispers, his voice trembling. I'll fight it. I'll take you for everything you're worth. I smile, cold and cruel. You can try, but I have the law on my side and a team of the best lawyers money can buy. You're finished, Damien. And as for you, Lilith? I turn to face my stepdaughter, my eyes narrowing. Don't even think about coming to me for help. You're just as bad as your father, and I'm done enabling your toxic behavior. You want money, get a job. You want love, earn it. But don't expect anything from me, ever again. Lilith's face crumples, tears streaming down her cheeks. Please, Raven, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it, any of it. I was just angry, jealous. Don't cut me off, I need you. I shake my head, my heart hardening to her crocodile tears. You need a reality check, Lilith, and I'm done being your punching bag. I have my own life to live, my own dreams to chase, and I won't let you or anyone else hold me back anymore. I turn to the stunned crowd, my head held high. Thank you all for coming to pay your respects to my father. But if you'll excuse me, I have a divorce to finalize and a new chapter to begin. I walk out of the church, my steps light and my heart soaring. For the first time in years, I feel alive, powerful, in control of my own destiny. Damien and Lilith can rot in the hell they've created for themselves. I have a legacy to claim and a life to rebuild, one brushstroke at a time, and nothing and no one is going to stand in my way. The gallery is buzzing with activity, the white walls lined with paintings that seem to vibrate with energy and emotion. I stand in the center of the room, a glass of champagne in my hand and a smile on my face. This is my moment, my triumph, and I'm going to savor every second of it. I see Damien across the room, his face haggard and his suit hanging off his frame. He looks like a man who's lost everything, and in a way, he has. I made sure of that. I saunter over to him, my heels clicking on the polished concrete floor. Damien, darling, so glad you could make it, I purr, my voice dripping with false sweetness. I know how busy you must be, what with the job hunt and all. He glares at me, his eyes bloodshot and his jaw clenched. You think you've won, don't you? He growls, his voice low and menacing. You think you can just destroy my life and walk away unscathed? I laugh, the sound bright and carefree. Oh, Damien, I don't think I've won. I know I have, and as for walking away unscathed, I'm not the one who's been blacklisted from every gallery in the city, am I? His face twists with rage, and for a moment I think he might actually hit me. But then a voice cuts through the tension, smooth and confident. Raven, darling, there you are. I've been looking all over for you. I turn to see Marcus, my new business partner and the owner of the most prestigious gallery in town. He's tall and handsome, with salt and pepper hair and a smile that could charm the pants off a nun. Marcus, so sorry to keep you waiting, I say, taking his arm and shooting Damien a triumphant look. I was just catching up with an old friend. Damien's eyes narrow, his fists clenching at his sides. Friend? Is that what you call the man who ruined your life? Marcus raises an eyebrow, his gaze flicking between us. Ruined her life? From where I'm standing, it looks like Raven's doing just fine. Better than fine, actually. Her show is a sensation, and the critics are calling her the next big thing in the art world. I smile, leaning into Marcus's side. What can I say? I had a lot of inspiration to draw from. Pain, betrayal, the depths of human cruelty. It's all there on the canvas for everyone to see. Damien scoffs, his face twitched with disgust. You're pathetic, Raven. using our marriage, our private life, as fodder for your little art projects. Don't you have any shame? I step forward, my eyes blazing with fury. Shame? You want to talk about shame, Damien? How about the shame of being married to a man who cheated on me, lied to me, and tried to steal my inheritance? The shame of watching my stepdaughter spiral into addiction and despair because of your toxic influence? No, Damien, I have no shame. Not anymore. But you should be drowning in it. He opens his mouth to retort, but I cut him off with a wave of my hand. Save it. I'm done listening to your lies and excuses. I have a show to run and a life to live, and you have a one-way ticket to rock bottom. Enjoy the ride. I turn on my heel and walk away, Marcus at my side. I can feel Damien's eyes boring into my back, but I don't look back. I'm done looking back, done letting my past define me. I'm Raven Blackwood, artist, survivor, and queen of my own fucking destiny. And nothing, and no one, is going to stand in my way. As we mingle with the other guests, I catch sight of Lilith, her face gaunt and her eyes hollow. She's talking to a man in a cheap suit, and I can tell by the way she's fidgeting that she's jonesing for a fix. Part of me wants to go to her, to offer her help and support. But I know that's not what she needs. Not really. What she needs is to hit rock bottom, to face the consequences of her choices, and learn to stand on her own 2 feet, just like I did. The applause is deafening as I take my final bow, the stage lights hot on my skin and the adrenaline pumping through my veins. I've done it. I've poured my heart and soul onto the canvas, and the world has embraced me with open arms. I step off the stage and into a sea of congratulations and well wishes, my cheeks aching from the constant smiling. But then I see a familiar figure pushing through the crowd, his face haggard and his eyes wild. Raven, please, I need to talk to you, Damien pleads, his voice hoarse and desperate. I've lost everything, my job, my home, my reputation. I have nothing left. I stare at him, my heart hardening to his pathetic display. And whose fault is that, Damien? You brought this on yourself with your lies and your cheating and your greed. He shakes his head, tears streaming down his face. I know. I was wrong, so wrong. But please, Raven, I'm begging you. Forgive me. Give me another chance. I'll do anything, be anything you want me to be. I laugh, the sound harsh and bitter. Anything I want you to be. I wanted you to be a faithful husband, a loving partner, a decent human being. But you couldn't even manage that, could you? He falls to his knees, his hands clasped in front of him like a penitent sinner. I'm sorry, Raven. I'm so sorry. I was weak, selfish, stupid, but I've changed, I swear. I'll prove it to you every day for the rest of our lives. Just give me one more chance, please. I look down at him, this man who once held my heart in his hands and crushed it without a second thought. And I feel nothing. No love, no hate, no pity. Just a cold, empty void where my feelings for him used to be. Get up, Damien, I say, my voice flat and emotionless. You're making a scene. He staggers to his feet, his face a mask of desperation and hope. And does that mean? I shake my head, a small, cruel smile playing at the corners of my mouth. It means I'm done with you, Damien, done with your lies, your manipulation, your endless cycle of betrayal and false remorse. I gave you chances, more than you ever deserved, and you threw them all away like the selfish, spineless worm you are. His face crumples, his shoulders sagging in defeat. Raven, please. I hold up a hand, cutting him off mid-sentence. No more, Damien. No more pleading. No more promises. No more second chances. You're dead to me, do you understand? Dead and buried, just like the love I once had for you. I turn to walk away, but he grabs my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. You can't do this, Raven. You need me, just like I need you. We're meant to be together. Can't you see that? I yank my arm out of his grasp, my eyes flashing with fury. The only thing I see is a pathetic, delusional man who can't accept that his time is up. You had your chance, Damien. Multiple chances, and you blew them all. Now it's time to face the consequences of your actions. I walk away, my head held high and my heart light. I can hear him calling after me, his voice growing more and more desperate with each step I take. But I don't look back, don't falter in my stride. I'm done being a victim, done being a pawn in someone else's game. I'm the master of my own fate now, the captain of my own ship. And I'm sailing towards a future that's bright and bold and full of endless possibilities. As I step out into the cool night air, I feel a sense of peace wash over me. I faced my demons, confronted my past, and emerged stronger and wiser for it. I'm ready for whatever comes next, whatever challenges and triumphs lie ahead. Because I know that no matter what, I'll face them head on, with courage and grace and an unshakable belief in myself. I am Raven Blackwood, and I am unstoppable. The sun streams through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new penthouse, casting a warm glow over the sleek, modern furniture and the vibrant paintings that adorn the walls. I stand on the balcony, a cup of coffee in my hand, and gaze out at the city skyline, a sense of peace and contentment washing over me. It's been 6 months since I walked away from Damien and Lilith, 6 months since I took back control of my life and my destiny, and in that time, I've accomplished more than I ever thought possible. My art has taken the world by storm, with collectors and critics alike hailing me as a visionary, a force to be reckoned with. I've sold pieces to museums and galleries around the globe, and my bank account has never looked healthier. But it's not just about the money or the fame. It's about the sense of purpose, the feeling of fulfillment that comes from knowing I'm making a difference in the world. I've started a foundation using my wealth and influence to support young artists from disadvantaged backgrounds. I mentor them, guide them, help them navigate the treacherous waters of the art world. And every time I see one of them succeed, every time I watch them take the stage and bask in the applause, I feel a rush of pride and joy that's unlike anything I've ever experienced. But even as I revel in my newfound success, I can't help but feel a twinge of emptiness, a sense that something is missing. And I know exactly what, or rather who, it is. Lilith. I haven't spoken to her since that fateful night at the gallery, haven't seen her since she stumbled out of the building, high and desperate and lost. But I've kept tabs on her, watched from afar as she spiraled deeper and deeper into addiction and despair. Part of me wants to reach out, to offer her the same support and guidance I give to my young protégés. But another part of me, the part that still bears the scars of her cruelty and betrayal, hesitates. And then, one day, I receive a letter. It's from Lilith, written from a rehab facility in Arizona. She tells me she's sorry, that she's been working on herself, trying to make amends for all the pain she's caused. She asks for my forgiveness, my help in rebuilding her life. And as I read her words, I feel a stirring in my heart, a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, there's still a chance for redemption. I write back, cautiously at first, then with growing warmth and affection. We exchange letters, then phone calls, then visits. And slowly but surely I watch as Lilith transforms before my eyes, shedding the layers of anger and bitterness and emerging as a new woman, strong and resilient and full of promise. Together we work to build a new life for her, one based on honesty and trust and mutual respect. I help her find a job, a place to live, a network of supportive friends and mentors. And as I watch her flourish, I feel a sense of pride and accomplishment that rivals even my greatest artistic triumphs. But even as Lilith and I mend our broken relationship, I know that there's one loose end left to tie up. One final piece of the puzzle that needs to fall into place. Damien. I've avoided him for months, refusing his calls and emails and desperate pleas for forgiveness. But I know that I can't run forever, can't hide from the truth of what he did and who he is, and so I agree to meet with him, one last time. We sit across from each other in a quiet coffee shop, two strangers who once shared a life and a love. He looks older, thinner, his eyes haunted by the weight of his mistakes. And as he speaks, as he pours out his heart and his soul, I feel a flicker of something that might be pity, might be understanding, but I also feel a sense of closure, a sense that this chapter of my life is finally coming to an end. And as I walk away from him, as I step out into the bright, bustling streets of the city, I know that I'm ready for whatever comes next. Because I am Raven Blackwood, artist, survivor, and master of my own destiny, and nothing and no one can ever take that away from me.
My name is Mandy Gale. I've been married for 3 years and don't have any children yet. The more we wish for a child, it seems, the harder it is to have one. My husband and I live with his parents. Since we haven't had children in 3 years of marriage, living together hasn't changed the outcome. That was the reason for living with my in-laws. And my husband agreed to this nonsensical reason. We live in such a big house. It won't be a problem if my parents move in, right? I couldn't argue with that. Indeed, there aren't any problems, and it's just a bit of extra care. However, what surprised me after moving in was that my in-laws believed this big, spacious house was purchased solely with my husband's salary. And they think my card is being paid for with his income and freely spend as they please. My husband is 30 and works a regular office job. An employee of his age wouldn't earn such a high salary. Yet, without any doubt, they believe whatever my husband says. So, how is such a thing possible? Because I am the president of a company with over 1,000 employees. However, I haven't even told my husband about this. If my husband knew about my salary, he would definitely become dependent on me and turn into a good-for-nothing. I've learned since we got married that he is extremely dependent and can easily lie. That's why I decided never to reveal my situation. But it can't stay hidden forever. After all, my husband works at my company. One day, he saw a company brochure and exclaimed with sparkling eyes, "Hey, Mandy, you've become the president?" Considering my husband prefers playing over working, he shouldn't be looking at company brochures. I hadn't cared about the brochure. However, as my husband excitedly showed it to me, I felt an internal panic. That's when I told a painful lie. It's a misprint. A misprint? Yes, I told them to correct that, but it seems they haven't yet. Why would there be a misprint? Well, you see, it's my father's company. I'm just the secretary, but the person in charge made a mistake. Oh, I see. I thought you had become the president for a moment. Too bad. If you were the president, I could have lived off playing. As if that could ever happen. If I were the president, I would be earning more and living a better life, wouldn't I? Right. A woman couldn't possibly handle being a president, huh? I thought he was a fool for believing such a silly lie, but I was truly grateful he was a fool at that moment. However, this level of foolishness was starting to become unbearable. The thing is, for about a year now, my husband has been growing colder. I don't know why. I loved him and envied his carefree nature, which I could only dream of since I took everything too seriously. And I thought he loved me too. But it seems I was only me who thought so. That belief turned into certainty the day I saw my husband walking and chatting cozily with the receptionist. I had no idea she was his mistress and casually approached them. Mandy. My husband's face turned pale in an instant. Why are you here? Huh, the way you're surprised, could it be you? Then the receptionist, Sarah, laughed and said, I've got the company heir. What? Who's the heir? Confused by her unclear words, my husband hurriedly added. Unlike the gloomy and unsociable woman, a model-like lover. I love Sarah. That's why I've decided to remarry her. What? I didn't understand what he was saying. Certainly, the woman in front of me was young and beautiful, like a model. I think it was my husband who said we should hire a beautiful woman for the receptionist because it would make a good impression. I thought it was good enough if she could do her job, but my husband, believing I was the secretary, told me. The reception is the face of the company. It has to be a beauty, or it'll turn the clients off. Tell that to the president. And so Sarah was hired. Certainly, wherever you look, the receptionists are beautiful, so hiring a beauty would indeed be better for the image. I naively thought so. But I never imagined it would turn out this way. Remarry? How? You're married, aren't you? I have to divorce first, obviously. Of course I'll divorce. You intend to divorce me? Yes, of course. You are really gloomy and don't suit me. What suits me is a bright and charming woman like this. I see. I didn't know how to respond to his seemingly innocent words. Nor could I, as the president, start yelling and screaming. I see. Congratulations. Inadvertently, pride took over, and words that seemed to condone his infidelity slipped out. I left the scene and headed to our house my husband would probably not return to. When I got home, I entered the bedroom and sat down in a daze. The scene kept replaying in my mind. Sarah's arm wrapped around my husband's. His face beaming with joy. Sarah is pointing at a brand store, expressing her desire for something inside. My husband nods in agreement, referring to me with the words, the gloomy and unsociable woman. I thought. So, I wasn't loved after all. I was the only one who loved him, and he saw me that way. I finally understand why Brian has been cold to me. If he's in a relationship with such a beautiful woman, it makes sense that he would grow cold. Moreover, if he's considering remarriage, there couldn't possibly be any love left for me. All I had was the profile of being the president's daughter. Was our marriage just based on that attraction? What a sad marriage it was. When we first married, I never imagined it would come to this. He was kind and always gave me plenty of sweet words. When I was troubled by small things, he reassured me that such worries were trivial and eased my anxieties. How happy that made me feel. Until the president left the office, I couldn't leave either as his secretary. My husband believed this lie and prepared meals for me. This stopped once we started living with his parents. It's only natural for a wife to cook. It's wrong not to take care of the home just because you have a job. After a tiring day, I'd come home to find delivered meals on the table, all plates empty. There was nothing left for me, and my husband and his parents were contently sprawled in front of the TV. In the end, it was my job to clean up the dirty dishes, and the trash can was stuffed with boxes I had never seen before. It felt so empty and lonely, and I wondered why I was the only one who had to endure this. I couldn't understand any of it anymore. But realizing that infidelity was the reason, I thought I couldn't just let this go. I thought, that's right. I should consult with my father. If anyone has a good idea, it would be the chairman, my father. Grabbing my bag and glancing at my in-laws sprawled in front of the living room TV, I dashed out of the house. The next day, I summoned my husband to the president's office. He arrived in the president's office with a broad smile, thinking the president was my father. Huh? Where's your father? Dad's in the chairman's office. Why are you here? This is the president's office, and it's odd for you, the secretary, to be sitting in that chair. Even if you are family, you shouldn't casually sit in the president's chair. Only someone like me, the next president, should sit here. You, a regular employee, will become president? I'm just a regular employee now, but I'm your husband, so it's only natural. Well, Dad is sitting in the chairman's office, in the chairman's chair. What? So, someone else is sitting in the president's chair? The person in front of you is sitting, huh? What are you talking about? You're just the president's secretary. How long will you keep thinking that? What? I am the president. Huh? What are you talking about? There's no way you, a woman, could be the president. If that were the case, this company would have gone bankrupt. But the company hasn't gone bankrupt. You say a woman can't handle being president, or that women can't do proper jobs, but here I am, managing just fine as president. This makes no sense. Isn't it time you accepted it? You're joking, right? I displayed the company's website on the computer screen, showing him my photo with the title president. What, even the website is wrong? You better get it corrected. You refuse to believe it, don't you? You might not want to believe that your wife is the president, but this is the fact. Pointing to the nameplate on the desk, I showed him the title president, clearly written next to Mandy Gale. No way. Looks like you finally believe it. So, that's how it is. Now I can live off playing around. What are you talking about? Didn't you say yesterday that you were divorcing me? Well, that was just. Then. I order your transfer. What? A transfer? Why does it have to be like that? You've been unfaithful, and you're also planning to divorce. It's only natural that you face some consequences. If I'm transferred, I can't become president. President? Why do you think you could become president? I'm your husband. Yes, you are. Don't we need a successor? You seem to forget an important thing. I am younger than you. Logically, I'll live longer. So, there's no need for a next president. But I married you so I could become president. But you've decided to divorce, so there's no way you can be president, right? Just because we're divorced doesn't mean that won't happen. You're so carefree. I never intended to make you president in the first place. And you want to remarry her, right? If I'm around, that'd be inconvenient for you, so I'll grant you a divorce. Here, sign here. It's already filled out. I placed the pre-filled divorce papers in front of my husband. However, understanding that signing this would be final, he seemed unable to reach for the divorce papers immediately. You don't need to take it now, but I'll make sure the divorce goes through with the help of a lawyer. I no longer acknowledge you as my husband. What? If Sarah finds out I can't become the president, she might just leave me. It's quite something to say that in front of your wife. If you want to remarry her, you'll have to divorce me first. Or do you intend to keep her as your mistress? Either way, I'm done with you. Well, beauties like her are rare. Then there's no choice but to divorce, is there? I'm going to divorce you, so you can remarry or do whatever you like. Worrying won't change the outcome. You're still going to be transferred to the subcontracting transport company. To the transport company? Yes, you betrayed your wife, the president, so that's what you deserve. Now, our conversation is over. Call your girlfriend. What are you going to do with her? She will be transferred to a different department. Are you trying to separate us? Whether you get separated is your own issue. Given the mess you've made, some form of punishment is necessary. This is a corporate decision, so nothing you say can change it. Please, don't be too harsh on her. I'm not going to do anything terrible. Just what's necessary. Hurry up and call her in. As I shouted this, Brian's shoulders slumped and he left the president's office. The next person to come in was the receptionist, Sarah. Huh? Why is his wife here? Do you also doubt that I am the president? But Brian said it was a typo that you are the president. Believe it or not, I don't care. But as you've taken the president's husband, you will be transferred to the factory. The factory? Why? Why does someone as beautiful as me have to go to the factory? Is there a problem with a beautiful woman working at the factory? But the factory is for old ladies and men, not for someone like me. That's a misconception. What are you talking about? I hate this. It's ridiculous. Even if you do this, it won't break us apart. I don't care if it does or not. I've already given him the divorce papers. If you're going to remarry, do as you please. Really? Yes. Then I can marry into the company's heir family? Heir? Yes. Marrying him means I could eventually become the president of the company. It might not be right now because of this incident, but once things cool down, he's bound to become the president. After all, he's the president's son. You seem to be under some major misunderstanding. Well, that's fine. But are you serious? Do you really love him? Of course. I thought. She thinks he's the heir. If you love him that much, you should be able to endure. Endure? What do you mean? Hasn't he told you anything? Told me what? He lives with his parents. That means I've been living with the in-laws. The in-laws are big spenders and don't even cook for themselves. So you'll have to do all the cooking or rely on delivery. Since I was president, I often came home late, and they used to order delivery almost every day. Well, that's okay. I don't think delivery is bad. But his salary won't cover the costs. But he has managed until now. Because of my income. Oh. They could do that because I was the president. So now, you'll have to cook daily, or it'll be tough. He'll do it, I'm sure. You think so? He doesn't do housework. He thinks that's a woman's job. Even if the trash bin is overflowing, he won't move it back. Really? Well, okay. I get to live in that big house, after all. The house? Yes. That house was bought with his salary. So even if you divorce, that house stays with us. There will be no division of property. Oh, you think so? Of course I do. Well, you'll see. Just be careful of the in-laws' spending habits. I'm out of it anyway. He'll handle it. After all, they're his parents. It's not my concern. Besides, if they like delivery, it will save my labor. I like delivery too. More importantly, there's no way someone as beautiful as me should do kitchen work. My hands would get chapped. You think so? I hope that belief won't change. You're just trying to scare me, aren't you? Huh? Female jealousy is scary, isn't it? But I appreciate you letting me know about the divorce. So, can we pretend the factory transfer never happened? I'm not going to the factory, and I'm quitting the company. Quitting? Yes, why should I work so hard when I'm about to marry him? I'm going to marry into a wealthy family. I'm about to debut in high society. There's no need for me to work. Wow, that's very optimistic of you. Well, okay then. Sarah then said, I'll submit my resignation letter. And left my office. However, despite her confident words, it seemed my comments had struck a chord. That night, she shared her anxieties with Brian. Hey, is there anything you need to tell me? Huh? No, nothing at all. I was told I'd be transferred, but what about you? Well, I will stay at the headquarters because I'm the president's son. So your life remains unchanged? Of course, I'm the heir. Who else would run the company if I were gone? But Mandy is currently the president, right? Oh, yeah. That's temporary. After this cools down, I'll take over as president. Running a company involves a lot of external affairs, you know? But don't worry, being my wife was just a role she played. Once we're divorced, she won't be around anymore. Really? Yes, really. That's a relief. I quit my job because I was told I'd be working at the factory. What? Well, a beauty like me doesn't belong in a factory, right? Yes, of course. Don't worry, I'll take care of you. After all, I'm the heir. So everything she said was just to scare me. Who? You mean Mandy? Yes, she called me in today and said a lot. But there's nothing to worry about, right? Because everything you say is consistent. You being the heir is an undeniable fact, right? Absolutely. Sarah smiled at Brian, but just then, his phone rang. Seeing my name on the screen, he tapped the answer button. What's up, calling at this hour? Sorry to interrupt your fun time, but I have something important to discuss. What is it? The house. You need to move out within a week. What? Why? I'm giving the house back to my father. Why? We're divorced, and it's inconvenient if you don't leave. Can't I just stay? No, you can't. It's my father's property. Why does it work like that? You said it was a gift. He was just lending it because we were newlyweds and I was the president. It seemed pitiful to let us live in a shabby place, so he bought and lent us that house. But now that we're divorced, you wouldn't want to live in a house full of memories, right? It's just my father being considerate. I don't mind living in a house full of memories. You have no right to live there. It's my father's property. If you really want to stay, ask my father. But we lived there, it should be part of our shared assets. It should be divided. As I said just now, the house was borrowed from my father. It's not subject to division. Everything in that house was also provided by him. But I'll give you all the money in your bank account. Not much, but better than me taking half, right? But where am I supposed to go? Isn't there a room where she lives? It's just an apartment. That's not my problem. You chose it. And make sure to take your parents with you. Damn. I forgot about my parents. Oh, that's too bad. Come on, since my parents are there, let us stay in that house. Your parents are your responsibility. It has nothing to do with me. With that, the call was abruptly ended. A week later, Brian and his parents moved out. Their new home was, of course, Sarah's apartment. They must be managing somehow as a family of 4. At least, that's what I thought. However, 3 months later, Brian called again. This is the worst. As soon as I answered the phone, he blurted out without any greeting. Oh, what happened? She found out everything I told her was a lie. What you told her? What kind of things? That I was the heir, the president's son. That I was still working at headquarters and would someday become president, despite being assigned to delivery. What? That's nothing but a bunch of lies. All lies, huh? I had no choice. I don't see how you had no choice. I thought if we got married before the lies were uncovered, then it wouldn't matter if they eventually came out. Once we were married, it wouldn't be easy to get divorced. So, you did get married, didn't you? That's just it, she refused. Plus, she said she couldn't stand living in a cramped apartment with 4 adults. If we were to marry, she said I'd have to sort out a house. Well, that makes sense. She started saying that it didn't make sense, the moment we divorced, to let go of the house which I used to say was mine. And that if I'm a true heir, I should be able to sort out a house. I can see that. She was so furious and said, why do I have to live in an apartment like this even though I'm rich? That's why I told her I've always dreamed of living in an apartment because I've always lived in big houses, but she hates the idea of living in such a small place. Well, she would say that, wouldn't she? And now, my parents are saying, how long do we have to live in this cramped place? I told them to wait because the house is being built, but then she started demanding to see the house under construction. I asked her if she didn't believe me. It would be crazy to believe you, given all the lies. I got told something similar. I'm amazed you can keep stacking up lies like that. Maybe you should have been a con artist? That's too much. So she left you? Yeah, eventually, she couldn't take it anymore and said, let's live together again once the house is built, and kicked me out. Huh? Kicked out, huh? So now I have nowhere to go. My parents are with me, what should I do? I don't know. My parents are old, so I can't just let them sleep outside. Why don't you sleep in a hostel? They're aged. How can they do that? Plus, all our stuff got thrown out. How could you be so heartless? I don't know. You reap what you sow. Instead of blaming others, maybe you should reflect on your actions. Look, I can't marry her without a house. Let me stay in that house. If we stay like this, my parents might get sick. I can't help you with that. Please help me, I'm begging you. How about I rent it to you for $5,000 a month? $5,000 a month? That's impossible. How much do you think I make? Before you were transferred, you were making about $3,000, right? Now that you're just arranging deliveries, it must be around $2,000. Yeah, that's right. My salary has dropped by $1,000. But it's easy, isn't it? Well, it's easy, but you said you wanted to live easily, so this situation suits you perfectly. But with a salary of $2,000, how can I afford to pay $5,000? That's why an apartment suits you better. It might be right for my salary, but it's nowhere near big enough. You know that. There are 4 of us, my parents and Sarah. That house is the best option for us. Then pay $5,000, and I'll let you rent it. That's ridiculous. I can't afford that. Then you'll just have to give up. You need to figure it out yourself. I'm asking because I can't handle it on my own. Plus, my parents are really extravagant. They're even talking about staying at luxury hotels now, can you believe it? Oh, they got used to spending money when they were using my credit card, remember? They've become accustomed to it after being poor originally. Tough situation. Exactly. I don't understand why they've become so extravagant. When I was a kid, we used to be so frugal. I'd get scolded for leaving the water running, and if I left food on my plate, the same dish would keep appearing until I finished it. Eventually, it would just dry out. We were that frugal, but now this? That's because they were using my card all the time. And it was a black card, so it had no limits. Your card, that was mine, right? Have you ever seen the bill? You never paid a cent. I covered everything. Is that right? Yes, I did that to spare you any trouble. You were able to act all high and mighty without knowing anything. I was really trying hard for your parents. Is that so? Okay. Let's get married again. What? If we get married, I won't have to worry about money. I can put up with you being gloomy and unsociable. And what about your girlfriend? She can just be my mistress. Oh, you're not marrying her? No way. She's a beautiful woman with a terrible personality. You're actually better suited for me. So, let's remarry and start over. Oh really? You know, Sarah is here right now. We've been listening to you on speaker mode. What? Why is Sarah there? She became suspicious if what you were saying was true or not, so she came to me to verify. Everything you've been saying has been heard by her too. Sarah, it's all a misunderstanding. I love you. Enough. You liar. Sarah finally realized Brian's lies and yelled at him in anger as she declared their breakup. Afterward, Brian apparently tried everything he could to win her back. Irritated by his persistence, Sarah, seeking to get even with Brian, approached me for advice on how to retaliate. So I suggested. How about I sue him for alimony? You can see him suffer from the debt. She liked the idea. Even after that, Brian kept pursuing her, and she finally moved to another state. When she settled down, I contacted Brian, saying, "You were supposed to pay me alimony, so pay up at once or I will garnish your wages." He cried out in disbelief. Despite his pleas to get back together, I refused, saying our divorce made it none of my concern. Meanwhile, his parents' spending habits didn't improve, and with monthly bills and alimony payments, he ended up juggling day and night jobs, visibly losing weight. As for me, I returned to my family home after breaking up with him. Free from stress and personal distractions, I recently found a compatible business partner and am living my best life.
The morning started like any other. I rolled out of bed, the familiar sounds of my husband Jordan's gentle snoring filling the room. Padding across the cool hardwood floors, I made my way to the bathroom and splashed some water on my face, trying to shake off the lingering grogginess. As I glanced in the mirror, I noticed something that made my heart skip a beat. A faint spotting, barely noticeable, but enough to set off alarm bells in my mind. I tried to push the worries aside, telling myself it was probably nothing, but deep down, I knew better. Jordan and I had been trying for a baby for over a year now, and the constant disappointment had started to take its toll. Every month, the same cycle of hope followed by crushing despair. I tried to stay positive, focusing on my job as an elementary school teacher, but the longing for a child of our own was becoming harder and harder to ignore. Over breakfast, I debated whether or not to bring up my concerns to Jordan. He was always so supportive, but I could see the frustration in his eyes whenever the topic of children came up. It was as if he was starting to doubt whether it would ever happen for us. "Everything okay, babe?" Jordan asked, picking up on my distant gaze. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just lost in thought." He reached across the table and gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "Don't worry, it'll happen for us. We just have to be patient." His words were reassuring, but I couldn't help but feel a twinge of doubt. What if something was wrong with me? What if I could never give Jordan the family he so desperately wanted? The day passed in a blur. my mind constantly drifting back to the spotting and the nagging fear that something wasn't right. By the time I got home from work, I had made up my mind. I needed to see a doctor, if only for peace of mind. Jordan was supportive, as always, but I could see the concern etched across his face. We sat in the doctor's office, holding hands tightly, bracing ourselves for whatever news was to come. "Mrs. West," the doctor said, her voice somber, "the tests indicate that you're experiencing early ovarian aging. It's a condition that can make it difficult, if not impossible, to conceive naturally." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. Impossible to conceive. My world came crashing down around me as I struggled to process the news. Jordan pulled me close, whispering reassurances in my ear, but I could sense a shift in his demeanor, a flicker of doubt, of disappointment that he quickly tried to mask. As we drove home in silence, I couldn't help but wonder if this was the beginning of the end for us. Could our love survive this devastating blow, or would the strain of infertility be too much for us to bear? Over the next few months, Jordan and I tried to remain positive, exploring every possible treatment option. He was supportive at first, holding my hand through the grueling rounds of fertility drugs and the invasive procedures that left me emotionally and physically drained. "We'll get through this together," he would say, pulling me close after another disappointing negative test result. But as time went on, I could sense a subtle shift in his demeanor. The reassuring smiles became more forced, the comforting words rang a little hollower. It was as if the constant disappointment was starting to wear him down too. One night, after another failed attempt at conceiving, Jordan let his guard down. "I just don't understand why this is so difficult," he muttered, his voice laced with frustration. "My parents had 4 kids without even trying." The words stung, reminding me of my own perceived inadequacy. I tried to brush it off, but the comment lingered in the back of my mind, planting seeds of doubt that would only continue to grow. As the weeks turned into months, the distance between us seemed to widen. Jordan began to bury himself in his work, coming home late and retreating to his home office for hours on end. I tried to be understanding, knowing that he was dealing with his own disappointment in his own way, but the loneliness was becoming unbearable. One night, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I noticed Jordan's phone lighting up with a text notification. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but something made me pause. A nagging feeling, a voice in the back of my mind telling me to take a closer look. I shouldn't have done it. I knew it was a violation of his privacy, but the temptation was too strong. I picked up his phone and felt my heart sink as I read the message. "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. I'll bring the wine." The words seemed to jump off the screen, taunting me with their implications. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the rest of the conversation, each message more damning than the last. Jordan came home a few hours later, his eyes glazed over and his movements unsteady. The smell of perfume lingered on his clothes, a scent that wasn't mine. "Where have you been?" I demanded, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. He looked at me, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Out with some colleagues from work, we had a few drinks to celebrate a project launch." The lie was so blatant, so transparent, that it only added insult to injury. I wanted to scream, to rage against the betrayal, but the words caught in my throat. "I know about the texts, Jordan," I finally managed to choke out. "I know you're seeing someone else." For a moment he looked stunned, like a deer caught in the headlights. Then his expression hardened, and he let out a bitter laugh. "Is that what you think?" he sneered. "Maybe if you could give me a child, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere for satisfaction." The cruelty of his words cut me to the core. In that moment, I saw the true depths of his selfishness, his willingness to place all the blame on me for our struggles. As he stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind him, I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. The man I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone cold and callous, someone capable of the ultimate betrayal. But even in my grief, a spark of determination began to flicker within me. Jordan may have thought he had the upper hand, but he had no idea what I was capable of. The game was just beginning, and I intended to play to win. The revelation of Jordan's infidelity hit me like a ton of bricks, but I refused to let it break me. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself retreating into a shell, isolating myself from friends and family as I grappled with the pain and betrayal. Jordan, for his part, seemed wholly unrepentant. He would come and go as he pleased, spending more and more time away from home, no doubt in the company of his mistress. The few times we did cross paths, the air was thick with tension and unspoken accusations. Why are you doing this to us? I finally worked up the courage to ask one evening as he was heading out the door. He paused, his hand on the doorknob, and turned to face me with a cold, emotionless stare. Maybe if you could give me what I really want, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere. The words cut deep, but I refused to let him see how much they hurt me. Instead, I met his gaze with a steely determination, silently vowing that he would pay for his cruelty. As the weeks dragged on, Jordan became increasingly brazen in his deception. He would come home late, reeking of cheap perfume and alcohol, and stumble off to bed without so much as a word. It was as if he had completely given up on even trying to hide his indiscretions. One night, as I sat alone in our living room, staring blankly at the flickering TV screen, I heard a faint, buzzing noise. It took me a moment to realize it was coming from Jordan's jacket pocket, which he had carelessly tossed over the back of the couch. Part of me knew I shouldn't look, that I was only setting myself up for more heartache. But another, more primal part of me couldn't resist the temptation. With trembling hands, I reached into the pocket and pulled out his phone. The screen was lit up with a string of text messages, each one more damning than the last, explicit photos, suggestive comments, and promises of secret rendezvous that made my stomach churn. As I scrolled through the messages, a sense of rage began to build within me. How dare he? How dare he betray me in such a callous, brazen way? The man I had once loved, the man I had vowed to stand by through thick and thin, was nothing more than a snake in the grass, a selfish, deceitful coward. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit idly by and let Jordan continue to humiliate and disrespect me. No, it was time to take matters into my own hands. If he wanted to play games, then I would play too, and I would make sure I came out on top. From that moment on, I became a woman possessed. I started keeping a meticulous log of Jordan's comings and goings, documenting his every lie and indiscretion. I gathered evidence, screenshots of the damning text messages, receipts for expensive gifts and hotel rooms that he had no doubt charged to our joint account. And all the while, I played the part of the oblivious, dutiful wife, lulling Jordan into a false sense of security. He had no idea that the ground was shifting beneath his feet, that his carefully constructed web of lies was about to come crashing down around him. It was a dangerous game I was playing, but I was fueled by a burning desire for justice, for revenge. Jordan had made a grave mistake in underestimating me, and he was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Little did he know, the true storm was only just beginning to brew. As the weeks passed, I found myself becoming consumed by my quest for revenge, meticulously gathering evidence of Jordan's misdeeds. But even as I built my case against him, a part of me still clung to the hope that it was all some terrible misunderstanding. That hope was shattered one night at a neighborhood party. Jordan and I had agreed to make an appearance, putting on a united front for the sake of appearances. As we mingled with our friends and neighbors, making small talk and sipping lukewarm beer, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her. A petite blonde woman, no older than 25, sauntering across the room with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. Our eyes met briefly, and she flashed me a sickly sweet smile that sent a chill down my spine. "Who's that?" I asked Jordan, trying to keep my voice casual. He followed my gaze, and I saw his expression shift ever so slightly. "Oh, that's Kaylee. She's new to the neighborhood." The way he said her name, the slight catch in his breath, told me everything I needed to know. This was the woman he had been seeing, the one he had been sneaking around with behind my back. As the party wore on, I found myself unable to take my eyes off of Kaylee. She moved through the crowd with ease, flirting shamelessly with any man who crossed her path, including Jordan. At one point, I caught them engaged in what appeared to be a heated conversation, their faces inches apart as they whispered back and forth. Kaylee's hand lingered a little too long on Jordan's arm, and I felt a surge of jealousy and anger coursing through my veins. When Jordan finally broke away and made his way back to me, I couldn't hold my tongue any longer. "So, who is she really?" I asked, my voice low and laced with accusation. Jordan's eyes widened, and he quickly tried to compose himself. "She's just a neighbor, babe. I was welcoming her to the community." The lie was so blatant, so insulting, that I felt myself shaking with rage. "Don't treat me like an idiot, Jordan. I saw the way she was touching you, the way you were looking at her." For a moment, he seemed caught off guard, like a deer in the headlights. Then his expression hardened, and he let out a bitter laugh. "You want to know the truth?" he spat. "She's the woman who's going to give me what you can't. A family." The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. I stumbled back, my vision blurring with tears as the weight of his betrayal crashed down upon me. Jordan must have seen the pain in my eyes, because his expression softened ever so slightly. "Look, Lila, I'm sorry, but this isn't working. We both know it. Maybe it's time we face the fact that we want different things." I wanted to scream, to lash out at him for his callousness, his complete disregard for my feelings. But somehow, I found the strength to hold my tongue. "You're right, Jordan," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "It is time we faced the facts." And with that, I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving him standing there, stunned and alone. As I made my way through the crowd, my mind was racing. Jordan had shown his true colors, and there was no going back. The gloves were off, and I was prepared to fight dirty if that's what it took to bring him down. Little did he know, I had been preparing for this moment all along. And when the time came, I would be ready to deliver the ultimate revenge. After the devastating confrontation at the neighborhood party, I knew I had to take action. Jordan had made it crystal clear that he was done with our marriage, that he was ready to move on and start a new life with his young mistress. But I wasn't about to let him off that easily. Not after everything he had put me through. For days, I seethed in silence, biding my time and waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. Jordan, emboldened by his admission, became even more brazen in his infidelity, spending nights away from home and making little effort to hide his liaisons with Kaylee. It was during one of these extended absences that I finally made my move. Using the wealth of evidence I had gathered over the past weeks, the incriminating text messages, the hotel receipts, even grainy photographs of Jordan and Kaylee in compromising positions, I began to piece together a damning case against him. I knew that if I wanted to truly hit him where it hurt, I needed to expose his betrayal in a way that would humiliate him, strip him of his false sense of superiority, and bring him crashing back down to earth. And so I hatched a plan. Late one night, after Jordan had once again failed to come home, I slipped out of the house and made my way to his office. I knew the security codes, the hidden spare key, all the little tricks he thought he had kept so carefully guarded. With trembling hands, I accessed his computer, rifling through files and folders until I found what I was looking for: his personal email and social media accounts, the digital lifeblood that he so carelessly left unprotected. One by one, I began forwarding the incriminating evidence to his closest friends and colleagues, his family members, even his boss. Explicit photos, damning text conversations, receipts for extravagant gifts and hotel stays, nothing was left out. And then, just for good measure, I took to his social media accounts, broadcasting his infidelity for the whole world to see. To my so-called husband Jordan West, I wrote, my fingers flying across the keyboard with a newfound sense of empowerment. "This is the truth you've been so desperate to hide." I hit send, and just like that, the floodgates were open. Jordan's carefully curated facade came crumbling down, his sordid secrets laid bare for all to witness. As I made my way back home, a strange sense of calm washed over me. I knew that the fallout would be nuclear, that Jordan's world was about to implode in spectacular fashion. But for the first time in months, I felt like I was finally in control of my own destiny. Jordan came stumbling in just before dawn, his shirt rumpled and his hair disheveled. He reeked of alcohol and cheap perfume, the telltale signs of another night spent in Kaylee's arms. He didn't even look at me as he staggered towards the bedroom, lost in his own drunken haze. It wasn't until later that morning, when his phone began to buzz incessantly with a barrage of calls and text messages, that the reality of what I had done began to sink in. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, his voice thick with panic as he scrolled through the damning evidence that I had so carefully curated. I simply shrugged, a small, satisfied smile playing across my lips. "I believe the truth is finally out, Jordan." His eyes widened in horror as the full weight of my actions hit him. In that moment, I could see the arrogance, the smug sense of superiority draining from his face. "You're going to pay for this," he hissed, his hands balling into fists at his sides. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. "No, Jordan," I said, my voice calm and steady. "It's you who's going to pay." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving him to face the consequences of his own actions. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. In the aftermath of my public exposure of Jordan's infidelity, the fallout was swift and brutal. His once thriving career lay in tatters, his reputation irreparably damaged by the sordid details I had so meticulously laid bare. Friends and family members who had once rallied around him now turned their backs, disgusted by his betrayal. Even his own parents, once so proud and doting, could barely bring themselves to look him in the eye. As for me, I found myself riding a wave of vindication, basking in the knowledge that I had finally taken back control of my life, my dignity. Jordan had thought he could discard me like yesterday's trash, but I had proven him wrong in spectacular fashion. Still, there was one final piece of the puzzle that needed to be put into place. A few weeks after the explosive revelation, Jordan and I found ourselves seated in the familiar waiting room of our fertility doctor's office. The air between us was thick with tension, a palpable sense of animosity that had only grown more pronounced in the wake of my retaliation. "Mrs. West, the doctor will see you now," the receptionist called out, her voice laced with a hint of pity that made my skin crawl. Jordan rose to his feet, shooting me a venomous glare as he brushed past me and made his way towards the examination room. I followed closely behind, steeling myself for what was to come. Well, what a pleasure to see you both again," the doctor said, her tone dripping with sarcasm as we took our seats. "I must say, your personal lives have certainly been eventful as of late." Jordan shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his jaw clenched tightly. "Can we just cut to the chase, Doc? I'm sure you didn't call us here to gossip." The doctor arched an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed by his bravado. "Very well, then. Mr. West, after reviewing your latest test results, I'm afraid I have some rather unfortunate news." She paused, letting the words hang in the air for a moment before delivering the final blow. "It appears that you are suffering from a severe case of male factor infertility. Your sperm count and motility levels are well below the normal range, making it highly unlikely that you would be able to conceive a child naturally." The room seemed to spin around me as the doctor's words sank in. Jordan, the man who had so callously blamed me for our inability to have children, the man who had sought solace in the arms of another woman in pursuit of his dream family. He was the one with the fertility issue all along. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then Jordan let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head in disbelief. "You've got to be kidding me," he spat. "After everything, after all the hell you've put me through, you're trying to pull this stunt?" The doctor's expression hardened. "I assure you, Mr. West, this is no stunt. The test results are conclusive, and they speak for themselves." Jordan opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off, unable to contain the fury that was bubbling up inside me. "You know, Jordan, I almost feel sorry for you," I said, my voice dripping with contempt. "All this time you've been pointing the finger at me, accusing me of being the reason we couldn't have children. You let your own selfishness and insecurity drive you into the arms of another woman, all because you were too blind to see the truth." His eyes widened as the realization began to sink in, the weight of his own lies and betrayal crashing down upon him. You knew," he stammered, his face pale. "This whole time, you knew." I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "Of course I knew. Did you really think I was going to let you get away with what you did to me, to us?" The doctor cleared her throat, clearly uncomfortable with the unfolding confrontation. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion another time, when emotions have had a chance to settle." But I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. "No, Doctor, I think it's time Jordan heard the full truth," I said, turning to face him head on. "You see, while you were off gallivanting with that little tramp, I was busy collecting evidence. Every sordid detail, every dirty little secret. I have it all. Jordan's face drained of color as the weight of my words sank in. In that moment, he knew he had been beaten at his own game, outmaneuvered and outsmarted by the very woman he had so callously discarded. And now, thanks to your own carelessness, the whole world knows exactly what kind of man you really are. I continued, relishing in the look of abject horror on his face. A liar, a cheat, a coward who was too weak to face his own shortcomings. Silence hung heavy in the air, punctuated only by the sound of Jordan's ragged breathing. For once in his life he was utterly speechless, stripped of his bravado and left to confront the harsh reality of his own actions. As we left the doctor's office, Jordan trailing behind me like a wounded animal, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. The battle had been long and hard fought, but in the end justice had prevailed, and for the first time in a long time I felt truly free. In the days following the devastating revelation of Jordan's infertility, I found myself riding a wave of vindication and triumph. After months of being gaslit and betrayed, the tables had finally turned, and Jordan was the one left reeling in the aftermath of his own lies and deceit. But my quest for justice was far from over. As word of Jordan's indiscretions spread like wildfire through our small community, I knew I had to strike while the iron was hot. I had already exposed him to our closest friends and colleagues, but there were still those who remained blissfully unaware of the true depths of his betrayal. And so, I hatched a plan, one that would ensure Jordan's humiliation was complete and inescapable. It was a warm summer evening when I invited both of our families over for a casual get-together. Jordan, still reeling from the bombshell I had dropped at the doctor's office, was in no position to protest. One by one, our loved ones trickled in, exchanging pleasantries and sipping on cool drinks as the golden sun dipped below the horizon. Jordan plastered on a forced smile, doing his best to maintain the illusion of normalcy despite the palpable tension in the air. Little did they know, I had already set the stage for the ultimate reveal. As the night wore on and the conversations began to flow more freely, I seized my opportunity. Clearing my throat, I clinked my glass with a fork, commanding the attention of the room. "Friends, family, thank you all for being here tonight," I began, my voice steady and confident. "I know these past few months have been trying for all of us, but I think it's time we address the elephant in the room." Jordan's eyes went wide, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the arms of his chair. He knew what was coming, but he was powerless to stop it. "You see, for a long time I believed that our struggles to conceive were my fault," I continued, my gaze sweeping across the rapt faces of our guests. "Jordan led me to believe that I was the one with the fertility issues, that my body was letting us down." A collective gasp rippled through the room, and I could see the looks of pity and concern etched on their faces. They had no idea what was about to hit them. "But the truth is, Jordan was the one who was unable to give me the child I so desperately wanted," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. "He was the one who was shooting blanks, so to speak." Jordan let out a strangled sound, his face flushing a deep crimson as the gravity of my words sank in. But I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. And instead of being honest with me, instead of facing the truth like a man, he chose to betray me in the worst possible way. I paused for effect, letting the weight of my next words linger in the air. "He cheated on me, with a woman half his age, no less." The room erupted in a cacophony of gasps and murmurs, eyes darting between Jordan and me in disbelief. "That's a lie!" Jordan shouted, shooting to his feet in a rage. "She's twisting the truth, manipulating all of you." But it was too late. With a few deft taps on my phone, I had already set my plan in motion. Suddenly the room was filled with the unmistakable sounds of Jordan's voice, captured in a damning audio recording I had made during one of our many heated arguments. "You're never going to be able to give me what I really want." His voice crackled through the speakers, laced with venom. "A real family, with kids of my own. Maybe it's time we face the facts. This marriage is over." A deafening silence fell over the room as the recording faded out, punctuated only by the sound of Jordan's ragged breathing. "You see, Jordan thought he could have it all," I said, my voice ringing out in the stillness. "He thought he could discard me like yesterday's trash, all in pursuit of his twisted dream of starting a new family with his mistress. I let the words hang in the air, letting them sink in for all to hear. But what he didn't count on was me fighting back. He never expected me to uncover the truth about his own infertility, his own lies and deceptions. Jordan opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He was utterly defeated, laid bare before the very people he had once tried so hard to impress. As our loved ones filed out one by one, casting disgusted glances in Jordan's direction, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. The battle had been hard fought, but in the end, justice had prevailed. And as I watched Jordan slink away, his head hung in shame, I knew that my quest for revenge was finally complete. In the aftermath of my explosive revelation, Jordan's world came crashing down around him. His once promising career was left in tatters, his reputation irreparably tarnished by the sordid details of his infidelity and deception. It didn't take long for the fallout to reach Kaylee, the young mistress who had so brazenly inserted herself into our marriage. As the truth of Jordan's lies and my vengeance came to light, she was quickly cast aside, reduced to a mere footnote in the twisted saga of our unraveling. I'll never forget the look on her face when she realized the depths of Jordan's betrayal, not just towards me, but towards her as well. The tears streamed down her cheeks as she confronted him, demanding answers that he simply couldn't provide. "You told me you were going to leave her," she had sobbed, her voice thick with anger and heartbreak. "You said we were going to have a family together." Jordan, for once, was rendered speechless. The mask of arrogance and bravado he had worn for so long had finally slipped away, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. "Kaylee, he stammered, his eyes darting around the room in desperation. "It's not what you think." But she wasn't having any of it. With a strength I didn't know she possessed, she gathered her things and stormed out, leaving Jordan to wallow in the wreckage of his own making. As for me, I found myself, slowly but surely, picking up the pieces of my shattered life. The road to healing was a long and arduous one, but with each passing day I could feel the weight of Jordan's betrayal lifting from my shoulders. I threw myself into my work, pouring my heart and soul into teaching and connecting with my students in a way I never had before. Their smiling faces, their boundless energy and enthusiasm became a balm for my wounded spirit. And slowly but surely, I began to rebuild my social circles, surrounding myself with people who truly cared for me, friends and family members who had stood by me through the darkest of times. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when the pain and anger threatened to consume me once again. But I was determined to emerge from this experience stronger, more resilient, and more grateful for the people and things that truly mattered. As for Jordan, his fall from grace was as spectacular as it was well-deserved. Without the support of his family and friends, and with his professional reputation in tatters, he found himself adrift, grasping at straws in a desperate attempt to salvage what was left of his life. The last time I saw him was at the courthouse, where we had gathered to finalize the terms of our divorce. He looked like a shell of his former self, his once confident demeanor replaced by a haunted, hollow gaze. "Lila," he said, his voice barely above a whisper as he approached me in the hallway. I don't know what to say." I regarded him coolly, my heart hardened by the months of pain and betrayal he had put me through. "Then don't say anything," I replied, my voice firm and unwavering. "You've said more than enough already." He opened his mouth as if to protest, but the words seemed to die on his lips. Instead, he simply nodded, a flicker of resignation passing across his face, and with that, he turned and walked away, disappearing from my life for good. In the months and years that followed, I found myself gradually letting go of the anger and bitterness that had once consumed me. Jordan's transgressions, while painful, no longer held the same power over me. I had emerged from the ashes of our failed marriage like a phoenix, reborn and reinvigorated, ready to embrace the next chapter of my life with open arms. And as I looked towards the future, one thing was certain. I would never again allow myself to be defined by the actions of others, nor would I ever let someone like Jordan take away my sense of self-worth and dignity. I was my own woman, strong and resilient, and nothing, not even the cruelest of betrayals, could ever change that. "Lily, $100 a month for groceries should be more than enough. If you can't make that happen, we'll just call it quits. Matt's words hung in the air like a bad smell. I stared at him, feeling a cold disbelief wash over me. You've got to be kidding me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. No joke. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a smug smile playing at his lips. Prove you're not that useless, Lily, or we're done. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to scream. This was the man I'd married? My husband of 5 years? I took a deep breath, the anger coursing through me like wildfire. Fine, I said, finally managing to speak. I'll do it. Matt shrugged as if it were no big deal. Good luck with that, he said, already turning his attention back to his laptop. I walked to the kitchen, his words echoing in my head. Useless. The man who used to praise my cooking, who loved every meal I put on our table, now reduced me to this? I grabbed a notepad and started jotting down meal ideas, my mind racing with determination. That night, as I lay in bed beside Matt, I stared at the ceiling. He was already asleep, completely unbothered by his cruel ultimatum. I replayed our conversation, every word a dagger to my heart, and something inside me shifted. This challenge wasn't just about groceries. It was a test of my worth, a value he'd callously questioned. I wasn't going to let him win. The next morning, I woke up early and headed to the store with my notebook in hand. I had a list, carefully planned out to stretch every dollar. As I walked through the aisles, I felt a strange mix of rage and resolve fueling my steps. I'll show him, I muttered under my breath, reaching for the discounted vegetables. By the time I returned home, I was exhausted but determined. I pulled out my phone and started filming. Hey everyone, it's Lily. Today we're tackling an impossible challenge, a month's worth of groceries on $100. As I chopped and cooked, I felt the knot in my chest begin to ease. The camera became my confidant. I shared recipes, tips, and tricks, pouring my heart into every post. The notifications soon started to ping. Comments, likes, new followers, total strangers cheering me on in this absurd quest. When Matt walked into the kitchen that evening, I was plating dinner. Smells good, he said, eyeing the meal with a rare hint of approval. I didn't answer. I was too fired up, too focused on proving him wrong through every flavorful bite. As days turned into weeks, my online community grew. Each meal I managed under the budget felt like a victory, not just over Matt's challenge, but over his belittling judgment. The more successful I became online, the more I realized how much I had let myself be defined by his cruel standards. And so, with each dish and every supportive comment from my newfound followers, I built my own fortress of resilience, one recipe at a time. It wasn't just about saving money anymore. It was about reclaiming my worth, about showing Matt, and more importantly myself, that I was far from useless. Sitting at the kitchen table, I flipped through an old photo album. The early days with Matt. Smiles, laughter, shared dreams. My fingers traced our wedding picture, pausing as the memories flooded in. It's hard to believe we were so happy once, I murmured to myself. Our first date had been at a small Italian restaurant. Matt had been charming, attentive, hanging on to my every word. You have an amazing smile, Lily, he had said, eyes twinkling under the dim lights. I had blushed, feeling special and truly seen. Thank you, Matt. I really like you, I had replied, shy but excited about the possibilities. Back then, he appreciated everything I did at home. This lasagna is incredible, Lily. You spoil me, he'd say, wrapping me in a warm embrace. Those moments felt distant now, like scenes from a movie that had long since ended. I shook off the nostalgia and stared at my camera. My growing hobby on social media had become my refuge. Hey everyone, it's Lily again. Today I'm sharing my favorite lasagna recipe, affordable and delicious, I said, starting the recording. Cooking had always been my joy, and sharing it on social media was a way to reclaim a piece of myself. As I cooked, memories of Matt and me laughing in the kitchen played in my mind. He used to help me chop vegetables, sneaking kisses in between. But that laughter had been replaced by his cold eyes and harsh words. Scrolling through old photos, one caught my eye. It was a candid shot of me, giggling as Matt tried to flip a pancake. The warmth of those days, the sincerity in his laughter, where had it gone? My phone buzzed, snapping me back to reality. A notification, more followers, more support. Cooking for strangers who valued my tips more than Matt had in years felt strange, yet rewarding. Each comment cheered me on. You're amazing, Lily. These recipes save me so much. While my social media presence blossomed, Matt became more distant. He spent late hours at work, giving me a generic apology when he bothered to offer one. "Sorry, Lily. Big project. You understand," he'd say, dismissively planting a kiss on my forehead before retreating to his phone. With cooking videos and the supportive online community, I found myself less concerned about Matt's coldness. I replied to comments like I was catching up with old friends. "Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the recipe." One afternoon, I set up my camera for another video when an idea struck me. I opened the fridge and checked its sparse contents. "Let's make something amazing with what we've got. Watch how we turn these scraps into a feast," I declared, hitting record. It was both a challenge and a defiance against Matt's cruel test. That night, as I set the table with a humble but delicious dinner, I waited for Matt's reaction. "This looks good," he said grudgingly, eyes not meeting mine. The praise felt hollow, almost mocking, but inside, I knew I was more than his cruel words. With every dish I shared, with every follower gained, I rebuilt my confidence. Matt would come home later and later, and the man in those happy photos felt like a stranger. But I found solace in my own growth and the strength I never knew I had. We used to laugh together, dream together. Now, our home was silent except for the click of my camera and the buzz of notifications, the world cheering on a woman determined to rise above betrayal. It started slow at first. Matt's missed dinners, the cold shoulder, the excuses wrapped in important business meetings. I would wait at the table, the meals I worked hard on growing cold. Frustration bubbled under my skin. One night, he walked in well past midnight, the scent of perfume lingering around him. I sat on the couch, the dim light from the TV casting shadows across his face. "Late again," I noted aloud, not even trying to mask the bitterness. "Work, Lily. You know how it is," he replied curtly, not even offering an apology this time. I watched him walk to the bedroom, anger twisting in my gut. Resolute, I logged into my social media accounts instead. The numbers had climbed again, more followers, more engagement, people genuinely interested in my recipes, not because they had to be, but because they wanted to be. "Hang in there, you're doing amazing, Lily," one follower commented, lifting my spirits in small yet meaningful ways. As Matt's absences grew more frequent, I threw myself deeper into my content. Each meal, each new recipe shared became my silent rebellion. It was more than cooking, it was proof of my worth. I filmed everything, from budget-friendly gourmet meals to heartfelt kitchen hacks. The community's love and support started filling the void Matt left. "Hey guys, today we're making a $5 feast," I said into the camera, a determined smile on my face. Despite everything, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. Each new like and comment validating my efforts, but the doubts still gnawed at me. One afternoon, as I chopped vegetables for a new video, I broached the subject that had been on my mind. As Matt walked in the door, I turned to face him. "Matt, have you thought about starting a family?" I asked, voice steady though my heart raced. He looked at me like I had just suggested the most ridiculous thing imaginable. "A family, Lily? We can barely manage as it is. What makes you think we're ready for that?" His words were sharp, cutting deeper than the knife in my hand. "Is it really about that, or are you just not interested?" I pressed, needing to hear the truth. "Don't start with this now. I'm too tired for your nonsense," he snapped, brushing past me again. The sting of his rejection settled deep. With Matt coming home less and less, the house felt empty. His coldness was a stark contrast to the warmth and excitement I found online. It became routine, his late nights, my growing channel. I knew something wasn't right, but I also knew I needed more than his disdain. I kept filming and posting, each video a small victory. As my small success started to translate into brand deals, I felt the tide turning. The nights Matt spent away from home only fueled my drive. Despite the pain and isolation, I found comfort in the screen's glow, a beacon of hope and validation. Little did Matt know, his neglect and cruelty were pushing me toward something stronger. His distance gave me room to grow, to prepare for what was coming next. With every new follower and every night spent alone, I found resilience I never knew I had. I was on the brink of uncovering Matt's true nature, and when I did, he'd see just how strong I had become. Another day, another challenge. This would be the third week since Matt dropped the bomb with his ultimatum, and my spirits were oddly high. The $100 grocery budget had become my battlefield, and I was winning. I prowled the aisles of the supermarket looking for deals, comparing prices. People might say it's impossible, but I'd managed to stretch every dollar. I picked up a pack of chicken thighs, discounted and perfect for multiple meals. When I returned home, I set up my camera. Hey everyone, today we're making 3 meals out of this pack of chicken. Can we do it? Of course we can. I began filming with a confidence that felt almost strange, yet very real. As my audience cheered in the comments, Matt's absence became a dull ache in the back of my mind. His late nights continued, his presence at home minimal. I moved around the kitchen like an artist in her studio, every chop of the knife a brushstroke against the canvas of betrayal he had painted. Matt stumbled through the door later that night. I was on the couch, answering messages from my followers. He walked into the kitchen, looking around for the meal I'd prepared. "Where's dinner?" he asked, voice gruff from what I guessed was another night out. "In the fridge. I saved you a plate," I replied without looking up. He grumbled as he heated it up. "You know, this budget thing isn't going to work forever," he said between bites, his tone laced with condescension. "Maybe not," I replied calmly, typing another response on my phone. "But I'm making it work now." At the end of the month, I reviewed our expenses. I had done it. I proved him wrong. I filmed a special video to mark the achievement. "Hey everyone, guess what? We've completed an entire month on a $100 grocery budget, thanks to all your support." My followers' encouraging comments poured in. Matt's reaction, however, was as heartless as ever. "So you did it. Big deal. Don't expect a medal," he said, tossing the statement carelessly over his shoulder. Frustration bubbled up, but I swallowed it down, determined not to give him the satisfaction of seeing me upset. Instead, I poured all of it into my cooking. Every critique from Matt was met with another video, another shared recipe. The tension in the house was palpable, the air thick with unspoken words. Our conversations were limited to basics, a flimsy facade of normalcy. Meanwhile, my social media presence grew stronger each day. Fans eagerly awaited my posts, and engagement skyrocketed. One evening, while editing a new video, I heard Matt on the phone in the next room. His voice was low and secretive. "Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow night. Same place." I paused, the words hanging in the air. A cold realization began to form. It wasn't just work keeping him away. My hands shook as I continued editing, playing the dutiful wife while pieces of a darker puzzle slowly clicked into place. The $100 challenge had come and gone, but something far more challenging was on the horizon. But first, I needed proof. Proof that he was the vile and manipulative man I was beginning to see clearly. From that moment on, every step, every meal, every message to my followers became more than just a hobby. It was preparation for a showdown I knew was inevitable. And I would be ready. Mark my words. I would be ready. I was unloading groceries when I heard Matt's voice from the living room. He was on the phone again, talking in that hushed tone he'd adopted lately. This time, I was determined to catch every word. "No, Lily doesn't suspect a thing," he said, a disgusting smirk in his voice. "Meeting you is the only thing keeping me sane right now." My heart hammered in my chest. I crept closer, hiding behind the kitchen door. "Don't worry, Taylor. Friday night is ours. She thinks it's another late meeting." I felt the blood drain from my face. Matt was having an affair. My body moved on autopilot, arranging groceries while my mind raced. I needed proof. Later that night, lying next to the man betraying me, I stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of his deceit. But instead of falling apart, I felt a steely resolve harden within me. I reached out to my growing community online for the strength to follow through. The next day, I called a private investigator. "I need your help," I said, clutching the phone tight. "I think my husband is cheating on me." "Let's meet. I can discuss what we'll need to do," he responded, his voice firm yet kind. After our meeting, the investigator began his work while I threw myself back into my cooking videos. On social media, I smiled and shared, all while piecing together the destruction Matt was bringing into our lives. As I documented recipes, the investigator gave me regular updates. "He's definitely involved with someone named Taylor. They've been meeting at the same hotel every Friday night," he informed me one evening. It stung, but I kept calm. "Thank you. Keep digging," I replied, determination underscoring every word. The evidence piled up quickly. Photos of Matt with Taylor, incriminating text messages, receipts for lavish dinners and gifts. It was sickening. Each new piece of information was both a dagger to my heart and a nail in his coffin. On the Friday of their next rendezvous, I put on my dinner table smile as Matt prepared to leave. "Big project tonight?" I asked sweetly. "Yeah, don't wait up," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Of course. Good luck," I replied, feigning innocence. Once he was gone, I sat down with the evidence, feeling a strange mix of emotions. There was anger, betrayal, and something else, relief. His demand for the $100 grocery budget, his absence, his coldness. It all made sense now. I stared at the pile of proof before me. The private investigator had even gathered videos, Matt laughing intimately with Taylor, looking at her the way he used to look at me. The anger simmered, but I held it back. The next morning, I confronted Matt. Evidence spread out on the table. "Care to explain this?" I asked, voice steady but cold. His face went pale, eyes widening as he took in the photos and texts. "It's not what it looks like." "Save it," I snapped, cutting him off. "I know everything. About Taylor, about the money you've been wasting on this affair. You thought making me stretch $100 would distract me?" He opened his mouth, but no words came. The shock, the guilt, the realization of what he'd done, it was all written on his face. "From now on, you're on your own," I said, packing the evidence into a folder. "I'll be talking to a lawyer. We're done, Matt." As I walked away, I felt lighter, stronger. Out of Matt's betrayal, I had found my own power. And this was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up before dawn, the weight of what I'd uncovered giving me no rest. But today was different. Today wasn't about waiting. It was about action. As Matt stumbled into the kitchen, barely awake, he didn't even glance at me. "Where's my breakfast?" he growled, his usual demands cutting through the silence. I met his eyes with an icy stare. "You want something to eat?" I tossed a crumpled $2 bill on the table. "Here's $2. Get yourself some cheap junk. Figure the rest out yourself." He froze, confusion and anger flashing across his face. "What do you mean? This is ridiculous." I didn't flinch. "Ridiculous? You think your affair is ridiculous? I know everything, Matt. Taylor, the hotels, the money you've wasted." I threw the folder of evidence onto the table, its contents spilling out. His face turned a sickly pale. "Lily, I can explain." "No, you can't." I kept my voice firm, every word a blow to his crumbling facade. "You pushed me to prove my worth. You tested me. Now it's my turn." I watched him scramble to find words, any words, but there was nothing left to say. I reveled in the silence, then turned and walked away, leaving him amidst the evidence of his betrayal. Once I was out of the house, I called my lawyer. "I need to file for divorce, and I want to make sure he pays for what he's done." My lawyer, Sarah, didn't miss a beat. "Gather all financial records, any proof of infidelity, anything that shows misconduct. We'll make sure he gets what he deserves." Armed with her guidance and my newfound determination, I dove into preparing my case. At the same time, my social media following was buzzing. Subtly, I started sharing snippets of my story without mentioning Matt directly. Sometimes, life throws challenges that test our strength. I posted alongside a photo of a simple yet elegant meal. The comments overflowed with support, my online community rallying around me in ways I'd never expected. Each day, I became more focused. Sarah and I met regularly, carefully piecing together the case that would ensure justice. Meanwhile, Matt's attempts at reconciliation became more desperate. "Lily, can we talk?" he pleaded one evening, blocking my path in the hallway. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied, pushing past him with a cold stare. His workplace caught wind of his affair soon after. Whispers and side glances followed him in the office. Taylor, now exposed, tried to keep her distance, leaving him more alone than ever. As my cooking brand continued to rise, I felt the tide shifting. My focus wasn't revenge for its own sake. It was reclaiming my life, my worth. I plunged into new projects, developing recipes, and making plans for a future without Matt. On the day of our court hearing, I walked into the courthouse with Sarah by my side. Matt looked gaunt, defeated. The evidence was overwhelming, and the judgment was swift. He would pay dearly, financially through alimony, and socially as his reputation lay in tatters. As we exited the courtroom, Sarah turned to me, her smile filled with genuine warmth. "You did it." I nodded, a weight lifting off my shoulders. "This is just the beginning." Walking out of the courthouse, I felt an unfamiliar lightness. It wasn't just about winning the case, it was the freedom from years of deceit and manipulation. But the journey wasn't over. Matt's world was only beginning to crumble. The first crack appeared when Taylor publicly distanced herself from him. Word of their affair spread like wildfire in his professional circles. "I can't be associated with this mess," she told him during their last clandestine meeting, which ironically wasn't so clandestine anymore. The private investigator had made sure those images surfaced at just the right time. Matt staggered into the house late that evening, a shadow of his former self. "Lily, please. Can we talk?" His voice was strained, desperate. I glanced at him with detached indifference. "We have nothing left to discuss. You made sure of that." He tried to approach, but I stepped back, a barrier he couldn't cross. He was imploding, and for the first time I felt nothing but a cold, distant satisfaction. That night, I posted a new video, my mind whirling with new ideas. "Hey everyone, today's recipe is all about fresh starts and new beginnings. Let's make something amazing." The community's responses poured in, each comment a brick in the new foundation I was building. Meanwhile, Matt's downfall accelerated. News of his affair leaked to his boss. The company couldn't risk the scandal. He was summoned to a meeting and returned home with a cardboard box filled with his desk's remnants. "I lost my job, Lily," he muttered, helplessly dropping the box by the door. "Not my problem," I said, not even bothering to look up from my laptop. I was deep into planning my next online event, a cooking class livestream that was already attracting sponsors. Days turned into weeks, each one worse for Matt. Without his job, his income plummeted. The judgment from the court added a financial strain he couldn't handle alone. His so-called friends vanished, each slipping away to avoid the mess he had become. One evening, sipping coffee in my new favorite cafe, I received an email. My first cookbook was officially published and ready for pre-order. I could hardly contain my excitement. I shared the news with my followers, the comments overflowing with encouragement and pride. Returning home, I found Matt rummaging through old bills, his despair palpable. "I don't know how to fix this, Lily," he said, tears brimming in his eyes. "That's your mess to clean up," I replied coolly. "You brought this on yourself." Watching him unravel was a stark reminder of the man he truly was, a man who tried to break me but ended up shattering himself. I felt a strange sense of closure. Moving forward, I immersed myself in new projects, cooking segments, sponsorship deals, and community events. Each success was mine alone, a testament to my resilience. Matt moved out a month later, defeated and broken. The house, now silent without his toxicity, became my sanctuary. I redecorated, shifting from old memories to new aspirations. From the ashes of betrayal, a stronger me had emerged. With my growing brand and supportive followers, I was ready to embrace a future untethered from the past. My story wasn't about revenge or loss anymore. It was about rebirth, a new chapter waiting to be written. The first morning in my new apartment was surreal. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over the minimalist furniture I'd carefully chosen. The space felt fresh, free from the shadows of the past. I brewed a cup of coffee and took a deep breath. The air smelled like potential, like new beginnings. With my recipe book published and my social media thriving, today marked the start of something beautiful. I sat down at my kitchen counter, scrolling through messages from followers. "Congratulations on the new book, Lily. Can't wait to try the recipes." Each comment felt like a step farther from my old life. As the day progressed, I finalized details for a cooking event, a live class that had drawn considerable interest. My phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, each one a reminder that I was building something all on my own. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. It was a delivery, a bouquet of vibrant sunflowers with a note, "To new beginnings. With love, your fans." I smiled, placing the flowers on the table. Their brightness mirrored my newfound optimism. Later, preparing for the live stream, I couldn't help but think of how far I'd come. The screen blinked to life and hundreds of faces filled the grid, each one eager to learn from me. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're making a special recipe from my new book. It's all about transformation, taking simple ingredients and turning them into something extraordinary, I began, the excitement in my voice matched by the enthusiasm in the comments. The interaction was electric, each step met with applause, each tip eagerly absorbed. I felt a deep connection, a shared journey of resilience and growth. By the end, the chat was filled with praise and gratitude. "Thank you, Lily. You've inspired us so much," one comment said. "No, thank you," I replied, feeling a lump in my throat. "You've all been my strength." After the class, I settled into the quiet of my apartment, reflecting on the path that led me here. The old life with Matt felt like a distant memory, a heavy coat I had finally shrugged off. A few days later, I heard through mutual friends that Matt was struggling. His new job was low-paying, and Taylor had left him after realizing he couldn't provide the lifestyle she wanted. There was no satisfaction in his misery, only a reminder of what I'd escaped. I poured my energy into new projects, expanding my cooking brand, planning future books, and engaging more deeply with my online community. Each venture was a brick in the sturdy foundation of my new life. One evening, as I signed copies of my book at a local bookstore, a woman approached me. "Lily, your journey has been so inspiring. You gave me the courage to leave my own toxic relationship." Her words touched me deeply. "Thank you. It means the world to hear that. We all have the strength to rebuild, even when it feels impossible." As I returned to my apartment that night, the city lights twinkling outside, I felt a profound sense of peace. The woman's words lingered in my mind, solidifying my purpose. Revenge had given way to something much more fulfilling: empowerment, growth, and the unwavering belief that I could forge my own path. My past with Matt was a chapter closed, and I was ready to write the rest of my story, one filled with hope, resilience, and endless possibilities.